There was a couple of questions coming out of yesterday. We had a very long day. Of course, we took a recess. We closed before we completed dealing with a resolution. So the resolution that we were dealing with will be the first resolution once we get to resolutions. So this morning, the first agenda items will be, I'll just go through the format for this morning. We have guest speakers from the federal opposition parties, the leaders, Jagmeet Singh, as well as Yves-François Blanchet from the Bloc Québécois. Jagmeet Singh, of course, from the New Democratic Party of Canada. Following that, so we've allocated 1 hour, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Starting at 10 a.m., we will have, representing the federal government, various ministers, and we will make those introductions when we get to that at 10 a.m. That should take 45 minutes to about an hour for those presentations, and then we will get into resolutions at 11 a.m. And again, as I indicated, we will start with the resolution that we were dealing with yesterday evening when we recessed the session until this morning. Also, some housekeeping announcements. A reminder of the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct that each one of us has signed. There is the Code of Conduct that was developed coming out of Panel 13. Very important to be respectful of each other, respectful of those around us, so that we conduct ourselves in a good way. I also would like to acknowledge and share with everyone that, of course, every morning at 7 a.m. we do have the pipe ceremony. And we did have the pipe ceremony this morning at 7 a.m. And that opened up in a good way. Also, yesterday we did close in a prayer. If you were not here, you may not be aware, or for those that were here, we had a person that went into medical distress during our deliberations. I've been advised that she was doing well last night. She was taken to another room and she was doing much better. So we are grateful for that, but continued prayers for the elder that we're all aware that, again, went into medical distress yesterday. So with that, those are just some housekeeping announcements. We are almost ready to get started, so we'll be back in a few minutes. Miigwech.
Well, good morning, William Bon matin. Just as Adam said, we will be getting started in a few short moments. So this morning we have a few distinguished guests with us, leaders of the opposition, as well as different ministers with us. We will then be going into resolutions, continuing the one that was started yesterday. We have an emergency resolution that was also sent to us, as well as the others that were on the agenda. Just as a quick reminder, we do have the leader of the Bloc Québécois here, so there will be French, is what I expect. Again, we have translation devices in the back, and there should also be the French translation on either of these screens. Quick note, the Circle of Trade does finish at 1 p.m. today, so if ever you want to get some final scrunchies, final loot, or create new connections, you do have from 9 to 1 p.m. today at the Circle of Trade. We will take a few minutes to set up, and we'll get started in the next few moments. Thank you very much.
Good morning. May I Jim Nawa? Wa Jewe Nogam Marjigam Munuk Gijebaya. The Nakum Guy Segwa Job Noguk. So good morning. We will get started very shortly. We know there were a number of caucus sessions. We're also just greeting our guests in the back, and we will get underway very shortly. I was trying to get the status this morning again of the elder that had the medical situation here yesterday. She's doing okay. I got the thumbs up. She's here? Okay, she is here. Thank you. Next to Nanaskum, I'm very thankful. Just to let you know, so she is here. She's doing much better. Also a reminder, I know not everyone was here, just a reminder, we do have on the agenda items this morning the leaders of the two federal opposition parties, and then we have the session with the federal government representatives. The federal ministers will also be here at 10 o'clock. So we are going to split the time from now until 10 a.m. With Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the federal NDP party, as well as the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet. So as soon as we have Jagmeet Singh available, he can please make his way up now. I will do the introduction. What we will do is we'll take about 10 minutes of a presentation from the Honourable Jagmeet Singh, representing Canada's New Democratic Party, leader of the party. We'll take about 10 minutes, and then we will open it up for questions. The format, again, in terms of order of questions, will go from microphone 1, 2, and then online, and we'll go back. What we'll do is we will take 3 questions at a time, and then we'll ask for a response. That will be the format we will be using for the leaders of the federal parties, as well as the federal cabinet ministers that will be here later this morning. 3 questions each, and then we'll ask for a response. We are mindful of the time that we do have other agenda items to deal with. So National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak has just entered the room with our first guest this morning. So I now would like to introduce the leader of the federal NDP party, Jagmeet Singh.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Fiddler. Great to see you all. I'm honored to be here. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded Anishinaabe, Algonquin territories. And for me, every time I do that, I think it's an important time for settlers just to acknowledge that we're on lands where the first people have been faced with historic and ongoing injustice. And for me, it's a reminder for me to commit myself to fight towards fixing that, fighting for justice, to remedy the injustice. I want to acknowledge a lot of important people in the audience today. Of course, the elders. I want to acknowledge all the knowledge keepers, the elders. In my tradition, and I know in the Indigenous tradition, it is so important to hold up and to value and to respect our elders. So thank you. The youth, as we acknowledge the elders, we've got to acknowledge the next generation. So we think about the future leaders, the ones that are going to take our place. And I want to acknowledge youth that are here. I saw a number of groups speaking and meeting, so it's good to see active youth. And the veterans, I met some earlier today, the veterans who served, and served maybe in cases where they faced discrimination and injustice, but still served the country. I want to acknowledge you and thank you for your service. And the chiefs, you got a tough job, I know, and it's an important job, so I want to thank all the chiefs. And finally, I want to thank National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak. It is a very, very heavy burden to carry as National Chief. Lots of important work gets done, lots of important negotiations, and I just want to thank you for all the great work you do. It's a tough job, and you're rising to the occasion.
It's truly an honor to be with you today. I'm truly honored, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
And then I look forward to hearing what you have to say and hopefully responding to any questions you have. But I have been spending a lot of time meeting with nations, meeting with leaders, and meeting with communities, and I've been hearing from you really clearly a number of things. One is that you are describing the reality that you are denied basic human rights, and it is wrong, and I hear you on that. You've described to me, and I've met with you in your communities and seen the overcrowded and dilapidated homes that are not acceptable. I agree with you on that. Clean drinking water remains an issue in many communities. The massive infrastructure gap, this one comes up again and again. The gap is huge. We got to close it. And this I'll take some more time to talk about afterwards or later on in my speech, but the specific, ongoing, painful reality of systemic discrimination when it comes to Indigenous people and policing and Indigenous people being killed by police is something that is very heartbreaking. It is wrong and it has to be addressed. A government that shirks its fiduciary duties. There are clear fiduciary duties that need to be met, and the government's ignoring and shirking that responsibility. And there is still an ongoing genocide that targets Indigenous women and girls. And that is something that is so wrong, so heartbreaking. And then I've heard many stories from your communities about this impact and how it has to end. I would say after 9 years in government, it is becoming more and more clear. I feel folks are sharing this with me that they feel that Justin Trudeau is letting them down, that there was high hopes and a lot of promises, but that has not been realized. That's not been fulfilled. He says a lot of the right things, but it's not delivering on those things. And I can tell you the government seems more interested in taking action for big corporations than taking action for Indigenous people. And it shows the priorities. Elle avait promis du réel changement, mais elle continue de décevoir.
Justin Trudeau promises change, but he continues to let us down. He promised change for missing, murdered, and Indigenous women, but he did not give any solution and any shelters.
When you have to fight and push a government that doesn't get the urgency of how the needs are needing to be met, and you got to get things done, and they're just dragging their feet, delaying, and not showing that urgency. I also want to point out to you, we're coming up to an election. I think it's important to point out, when it comes to Indigenous sovereignty and respect for indigeneity, I think it's clear we all know where Pierre Poilievre stands. If not, I'm going to point out some things. He has promised so-called economic reconciliation, but he votes against harmonizing our laws with the United Nations Declaration. So that means he doesn't want you to have free and prior informed consent, have authority, the right to decide over your own resources, your own lands. There cannot be economic reconciliation if the people of the land don't have power over decisions on their land. And so I think that is a fundamental issue. What I know is, from knowing him and seeing his work, he will always side with the billionaires. That's who he's in it for. And if the billionaires' interest is not aligned with Indigenous communities' interests, he's going to side with the billionaires. For him, he wants to cut. He's been very clear he wants to cut. So that's going to mean cutting Indigenous health care, which is already plagued with problems. We know that NHIB needs so many changes. Imagine cutting that. It's going to make it even worse. He wants to cut Indigenous services that are already pretty inadequate in a lot of cases. Cutting them would just make it worse. He talks a lot about freedom, but he doesn't want freedom for you. What he wants is freedom for himself. He wants freedom to ignore your treaty rights. He wants the freedom to ignore your rights. He wants freedom to ignore the obligations of the Crown. He wants freedom to ignore free, prior, informed consent. And this is who he really is. You can't say that this is a mistake or, he slipped up his words. He said, literally, in the most heartless way, in the most callous way, that residential school survivors need, quote, stronger work ethic, not compensation. Who says that? These are people that have survived atrocities, the trauma, the real pain, and he says that those people just need to work harder. What a shameful thing to say. You can apologize for that, but it just shows you who you are, if that's what you can even say. He said that chiefs like you, quote, have too much power. This is again who he is. He's taking shots at the chiefs, taking shots at people dealing with trauma. He's a guy that goes to the Frontier Center to give a big speech to his friends. Keep in mind, the Frontier Center is an anti-Indigenous organization that denies the truth of residential schools. Il ne fera jamais ce qu'il faut pour que justice soit.
He will never do what needs to be done to give justice to Indigenous populations. And he will cut your funding.
We know that reconciliation is not compartmentalized. You got to do it in all aspects. For us, it means we got to respect free, prior, informed consent. It means making decisions, you making decisions about your own land and your own resources. I would say that upholding treaty rights and modern treaties, your right to housing, clean drinking water, and all your human rights that have been violated for so long is not only the right thing to do, the morally right thing to do, it is good for the interest of the country moving forward. I believe that lifting up Indigenous law as affirmed by the United Nations Declaration is the true path that we need to walk on. As you know, we've got a really strong team of Indigenous advocates and Indigenous MPs. NDP MP Leah Gazan tabled Bill C-413, which would make residential school denialism an offense under the criminal code, as it should be, because we know it's racist to deny the reality of residential school trauma. She also worked with you to ensure a Red Dress Alert pilot project is launched to help stop the genocide of Indigenous women and girls. We want to see that Red Dress Alert spread across the country so that we value and respect the lives, the sacred lives of Indigenous women and girls. NDP MP Nikki Ashton, who's another strong ally, is fighting to close the infrastructure gap, and she's been working to protect Indigenous languages. She's also leading our efforts to lift up leadership of the Shamattawa First Nations and the Atiasquiac Cree Nation as they fight for clean drinking water. And I know you've seen some of the work of NDP MP Lori Idlout, very proud Inuk woman, who is fighting hard to fix some of the deeply flawed legislation that the Liberals are putting forward, particularly on the First Nations clean drinking water. She worked really hard to make sure that bill had some changes done to it to improve it. We also know NDP MP Blake Desjardins, who's Métis and Cree, who's fighting for safe and affordable housing on reserve and adapting to climate change, and real funding to finish the all-weather roads that many of your communities have fought for. And I've heard, actually, I should have mentioned that in the things that I've heard from you, the all-weather roads are so important because the winter roads are getting less and less viable and they're only open for shorter and shorter periods of time. And Lori forced a House of Commons emergency debate on policing Indigenous peoples, because this is a crisis. And this is what I said I was going to talk about a bit more. For decades, I know your communities have felt the pain of policing that is discriminatory, that targets Indigenous people, that doesn't actually respect and value their lives. And now we are seeing more and more examples of violence being perpetrated by police against Indigenous people. I want to honor the victims and their families and lift up the voices of your leaders. That's why I'm joining you in your call for a national inquiry into systemic racism in policing. I want to acknowledge your leadership, the leadership of your national chief and all the chiefs here, saying that this is getting to a crisis point now. Too many lives, so many lives have been lost, and we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to clearly understand that there's something going on in systemic racism when it comes to policing Indigenous people. In September, when Lori Idlout secured the emergency debate on this topic, 6 First Nations people have been killed in just 11 days. 6 people in 11 days. And since then, sadly, the number's only grown. So we need to make sure we address this. The current police system is stopping you from building the future that you deserve. It's stopping the youth from feeling safe. And so we believe that the Crown has a responsibility to address this. Furthermore, we believe the Crown has a financial responsibility under treaties that they're not living up to. We are committed to providing your communities with the resources that you are owed and deserve. First Nations-led police services, mental health supports, better training and resources to ensure that you are safe in your own communities. And we're going to fight to make sure that there's Indigenous-led crisis team response, because in a crisis, we need Indigenous leaders there on the ground so that we can protect and save lives. Anytime you send a New Democrat to Ottawa, this is what you get. Someone who's going to fight for you, stand up for you, who cares deeply about you. I'll just wrap up maybe with a couple points about what I really, truly believe and want to see happen. One of the things my mom taught me, one of my early teachings, a big part of our tradition, is this belief that we're all one. And I remember when I was a kid, it was something very hard for me to understand. She would say that we're all one. And I said, well, we look different, we come from different places, we speak different languages, how are we one? See, at the heart of it, that energy that we have, that which connects us, is much more powerful. Our commonality is much more powerful than our differences. Celebrate those differences, but we are one. And so we would do something in our tradition which is called seva, where you give back to the community, you serve the community. And so sometimes it would mean serving food to elders or to people in the community. And so when we were doing that work, she said, don't think you're serving just an elder or even someone you don't know. Imagine the person you're serving is your own mother, is your own sister, is your father, is your brother. Imagine that it is you. You're serving yourself. If someone around you is hungry, you're also hungry. And if you care for the people around you, you're caring for yourself. That is a fundamental belief I have, and it's why I really want to lift up the people around me, why I want to fight for justice, because I believe we're all one. I want a Canada where we all rise together, a country where we've got more time for joy and less worry, where we have more hope and less fear, where we have more justice and compassion, less greed. I want to work with you in a true nation-to-nation relationship to ensure all communities have safe housing and infrastructure, clean water, Indigenous policing, access to Indigenous health care, including improving the non-insured health benefit, high-speed broadband, which is so fundamental now. I want to put an end to the genocide that's going on against Indigenous women. I want to make sure that all the TRC calls to action and the MMIWG calls to justice are implemented. The Special Interlocutor for Unmarked Graves' final report and recommendation needs to be implemented, not sit on a shelf collecting dust. Kimberly Murray took on the important work of collecting stories from Indigenous people, and we must, all of us, hear their voices. I want to make sure your inherent treaty and First Nations rights are upheld. I want to make sure the federal government provides adequate supports for First Nations so that people can live prosperous lives, so that people have hope, so that the economies of Indigenous nations and the Canadian economy can thrive together, providing for people. True nation-to-nation relationships isn't just the morally sound thing to do. It's actually the only way that business gets done. Good business gets done when we're partners, not when Ottawa imposes. Those are court challenges, those are fights. It's actually not good. It's not the right thing to do morally, but it's also bad for business. It's a bad way to move forward. I believe we can rebuild First Nations capacity and support Indigenous-led institutions so we can walk together. To amplify your strengths and ensure your knowledge is a part of the decisions that impact your own lives. No more empty promises. In the next election, I want to put to you, you got a choice. I recognize that the Liberals have let you down, and I hear people say the Liberals probably won't get another chance. But I will not stand by, and Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives, take your power and cut the services that you need and deny your truth. I'm not going to stand by for that. I'm going to fight back. I just want you to know that please count on me as an ally. I want to stand with you. I want to fight on your side to support you. I want to amplify your voice. And if you ever need my help, if you ever need my team, please reach out. We'll be there for you. Thank you so much. Merci. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP for the New Democratic Party of Canada. We had about 2 minutes left. We were going to open it up for questions, so if there is one question, we might be able to take it. Otherwise, we'll go to the next speaker. Just to let you know, chiefs and proxy representatives, we are hopeful that the Prime Minister will be here for 10 o'clock, as well as federal cabinet ministers, and I know that you will have questions for the Prime Minister if he's here, so we'd like to make sure that we wrap up and get to the next speaker, and then we can get to the Prime Minister and cabinet ministers. So again, we had 2 minutes left. I see 4 speakers, but my understanding is that we will have questions for the Prime Minister, so we'd like to move on fairly quickly. So if I can make it quick, we'll take 2 speakers, 1 and 2, but again, if we can please make it quick. Microphone 2, please. Sorry, microphone 1. I pointed to 1, I said 2. Microphone 1. Microphone 1.
Hello. Hi, my name is Raven Hall. I'm one of the elected band councillors from Kitasoo Haycase Nation. I just want to say I appreciate you showing up here today. I also want to say just very quickly and very briefly that, you know, Indigenous people, we are not a campaign trail. So everything that you are speaking out in any platform that you go to, reconciliation is action. So I look forward to, you know, to see you in government. That is what I am hoping for. And number 1 is that, you know, I am an Indigenous advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous people. And we've been waiting on that red dress alert for a long time. I get messages every day, so much so just last night, I'm from BC, and telling me that 2 young girls are missing. Those red dress alerts could have saved thousands of people just this year. So I just want to make that loud and clear that reconciliation means action. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be able to take one final speaker at microphone 2. Go ahead.
Council of Ganawage. I'm still waiting to hear back from you. I sent you an invitation back in July. I haven't got a response back. But if we're talking true nation to nation, from Ganawage's stance is just get it Ganawage's way and let us do what we have to do. But you have many individual nations that are here. You need to meet with us directly and not just at of organizational level. So again, I invite you to Ganawage as well as to the Iroquois Caucus, and we represent ourselves at the end of the day. So yeah, well, and I'll give the rest of my time to my colleague.
Good day, gentlemen. Nice to see you. I have numerous questions, but I'll just keep it short and sweet. Do you support First Nations people to pay carbon tax? I'll just leave it like that, and hopefully we can have conversation in the future. I did invite you to my territory, but we got snubbed. Masi, Cold Lake First Nations Chief.
Miigwech. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jagmeet Singh for final responses and closing comments.
Sure. Thank you very much for the questions. First was the Band Council about the red dress alert and how it could have saved lives in BC. I agree. I want to see this get expanded as quick as possible. I think the Highway of Tears in BC would be a very logical next step to get the pilot project expanded. And so we're pushing for that. I hear you. This could have saved lives. I want to save lives. I'm going to push to make sure this happens. Ganawage, I was in the nation. I had a couple of visits there in the past, but I'm definitely due to visit again. I will definitely make sure we respond to the invitation. Sorry for the lack of response. I agree. I'm trying to get out to as many nations as I can, and being on the ground is the best way to speak with and connect with the community. And then another chief, again, raised the same invitation, so I will make sure we try to follow up. And we're going to put forward a different plan on the climate. And I would say that when it comes to the climate, we got to be real clear about the different plans. The conservative plan is to say that if you're a big polluter, no cost. Pollute as much as you want. That's their plan, right? They're saying no price on pollution. So no price on pollution means if a big company pollutes into the water, pollutes into the land, pollutes into the air, poisons the land, poisons the water, poisons the air, he's saying that there should be no cost for that. They should do as much as they want, free. I think that's wrong. I think there should be a cost. If a big company wants to try to pollute the land, I want to stop them from doing that. I want to make it so expensive that it's not worth it for them to pollute the land and the water and the air. So I think that's why I would disagree with Pierre Poilievre, who thinks there should be no cost to polluting. But with Justin Trudeau, I think the plan that he's put forward puts too much burden on working people, puts a burden on families, puts a burden on people, and lets the big polluters off the hook. And I think that's a problem. So we're going to have our own plan, which will be different, which will not let the polluters off the hook, and which will support the working people. Will support the working class, who we are. So those are the different approaches, and eventually people will choose what they think is best. Thank you so much.
Miigwech, thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak to present a gift.
Well, thank you. Just on behalf of all First Nations and First Nations chiefs in attendance and the attendees here, we want to thank you for giving us your time today. And here's a small gift and token from all of us. Chimigwich.
And I'll now introduce my colleague Cedric to get us into the next presentation.
Donc bonjour tout le monde. On va continuer avec nos...
Good morning, everybody. So we'll continue with our distinguished guest. The next one who will talk to you is the leader of the Bloc Québécois, chief of the party, Mr. Yves-François Blanchet. Please come on down. Good morning. Allow me to speak to you in French, understanding that there is a simultaneous translation on the screen and on the booth, and I wouldn't like my imperfect mastery of English to finally make my speech understandable. And so, good morning, everybody. My speech will be quite general because it's the first time that I'm talking to you, but it seems to be clear that I should repeat, reiterate, reestablish some principle that will condition the relationship that the Bloc Québécois has with the First Nation, or that Quebec has with the First Nation, being understood that the Bloc Québécois doesn't speak for the province of Quebec, which has its own representation, but has a federal political party which is platform for the Quebec population at the federal level. First thing to have something that's going to be constructive and sustainable will be the knowing each other, a sincere one, I would say, not the superficial knowledge, operational knowledge, to give a lip service, would you say, and to deliver very polite sentences at the necessary time. And something of interest, and it is of interest to me because I'm an ethnologist by training, and actually I'm interested by the First Nations in Quebec and all the First people in everything they have beautiful. We have to not only know each other and all the diversity of the First Nation, but the reciprocal is true also. Our history is a common one, and we do share because I'm the bearer of an history which has been if you want, interlaced with on the Quebec territory with the First Nation, and indeed admitting the French settlers and other people of all origin who came to Quebec. Our history is common on a common land, and the exploitation of the said territory will always be an issue that will request the negotiation to be made out of good faith and indeed through history important prejudice were inflicted to First Nation as we had in the French-Canadian history. Significant prejudices were in fact inflicted to the French descent citizen through history. This, if you want, common knowledge will lead us to the natural to understand this right to self-determination. You will understand that nobody in the Ottawa Parliament will be so tied to self-determination than the Bloc Québécois. And I would say that a lot of French Canadians, in fact, a lot of Quebecers have want to take all the attributes of sovereignty, and that the right to self-determination must ensure that the common understanding that we have with each of the First Nations be much more tight. This is a form of complicity, of form of mutual respect in this right that we want to recognize to each other, and that somebody else could eventually deny or negate as you want. The Ottawa government and sometimes the Quebec government will play on the complexity of the institution at the federal, provincial, municipal level, and on the diversity of numbers of First Nation to distillate through the differences some division that will not lead to the respect of the rights that are yours. One of the examples and one of the topics on which we should dwell, because it came back often, is that of the Aboriginal languages. Nothing is more pleasing to me when I'm meeting people from the First Nation to see that Aboriginal languages, for most of them, are living languages, and that important effort has been taken and important means were had so that they would be taught, spoken, and alive. The preservation and the perennity of a language is not in its recording and its printing in a book or a cassette. It is in the daily life, in the lived life, in the learning of the children, in this thinking mode that will define their life. So in the file of indigenous and languages, you can count on the support of the Bloc Québécois. I don't want to be too long because we convened that I should answer to several questions, and I'll be pleased to answer to them, but I will end by insisting on the notion of relationship from nation to nation. The relationship from nation to nation is not a function of number. Would an indigenous nation be made of only a few hundred people, it would be a nation as well as the French-Canadian nation made up of millions of individuals. Its rights and prerogatives are the same. It is only by respecting this principle that each nation with its own identity, equal to equal, will ensure their perennity and their contribution to the extraordinary diversity that might persist and should persist on this planet. Thank you. So, François Blanchet, Chief of the Bloc Québécois, we will open up.
2 or 3 speakers for sure. So again, if you want to head up to the microphone, and if I can have our technicians set up the Zoom screen for us here on the bottom. So we will head to microphone number 1, please.
All right, thank you. Chief David Morias, Payment just listening to you, but with the Bloc Québécois, as a party that champions Quebec's autonomy and sovereignty, how does the Bloc Québécois plan to support the recognition of First Nations sovereignty and self-determination across Canada? Specifically, what actions will you advocate for to address the ongoing healthcare crises and all the other crises in health, housing, infrastructure in Northern First Nations communities, including ISK, monopoly, and critical service gaps and inequities in healthcare? And so how would you do that? Thank you.
OK. C'est une assez grande question.
Thank you. It's quite a large question, and the first element of answer could not be what I would like, because first of all, the Quebec state, as the sovereign Quebec state, would have their own government that will take their own decision. I can tell you what are the values that we have at the Bloc Québécois. When I told you that it was a relationship from nation to nation, it means several things. It means that sovereign Quebec, truthful to her history, because this relationship from nation to nation was first put forward by René Lévesque, who was the first independentist leaders in Quebec, even if you had some before, but I believe it will continue to animate the relationship we want to have with the First People. I don't want to be complacent here, but it doesn't mean that each time that we will have an issue, we will always agree, always accept all the requests. I believe that the spirit with will we will go to this discussion, tackle discussion, will be that of a nation that understands that your own prerogative are precious, be it in terms of funding, decision-making, international recognition. I repeat to you that an indigenous nation should be treated like any other nation, and the Quebec nation, whatever it has as prerogatives. C'est un petit rappel.
And we will now go to microphone number 2.
Sego Sogwego, Canadian Kodidaibo Ujets, Ahondo Ikadene Redzahias. I am the Grand Chief for the Mohawk Council of Ngunnawage, who currently will say houses many of the Quebecois on our unceded territory. It is still our land. Our ancestors were there. My ancestors were there when your ancestors arrived on boats. But I would like to have a conversation with you in a different forum so we can discuss that in more detail. I know we're limited on time, so I want to give conversation or points for my colleagues as well and fellow other chiefs. But I welcome you to Ngunnawage, and we can have a conversation about what our relationship should be and how your people can start packing up.
OK. C'est vraiment des... Je suis d'accord avec le fait que...
Well, I do agree that we will have to speak in other places, on other tribunes, but these are not issues that we can answer in a few seconds. We are all very aware that we came here hundreds of years ago by boats, but I was not there and neither were you. So the mutual recognition of history, if you want to understand each other, we have to take into consideration today's reality, and there's a point I would like to raise. I don't know what happened. In today's reality, immigrants, we are the immigrants. We came on lands where people were living with their own way, without the intervention that was dramatical through history, the presence of the white colonizer. So nowadays we have to search for a balance which will be respectful of everybody's prerogative from the point we are now and with everything that this involves. And naturally, without, and this includes the past prejudices.
Kelsey Jacko, Chief of Cold Lake First Nations. I'll be quick, but not too quick, give time for the translation. I have a single message for you and your party. Yesterday, Chiefs and Assembly passed a resolution calling for all of the opposition parties to support Bill C-413. The vote was nearly unanimous. Please do whatever you can to add residential school denialism to the criminal code. Ask for this bill to be moved up and vote for it. Merci.
Parmi les éléments les plus dramatiques de l'histoire,
among the most dramatic element of the history of prejudices that we have to acknowledge, there is indeed the will from the part of the white colonizer to make sure that language and culture of entire nation would disappear, and this by processes that, when described by those who lived through it, was quite horrendous. There is no sane relationship that would be possible without first acknowledging what history does contain. But I will underline that sometime in Quebec, the relationships between the nation of French origin and the first people historically was rather positive, but we will not deny that and for which the excuse will never be sufficient.
So that's about the time we have. I'd like to thank Chief of the Bloc Québécois for having been here today. Again, a first is what I understand, and for taking the time to answer a few questions. Yes. We also do have a small gift that will be given by Regional Chief Bernard. So maybe just a few housekeeping things before we get to our next agenda item. I just want to say again, for the safety of everyone here, we do have a few ministers coming, so we will ask people to respect the reserved area for our chiefs in the front. This also applies to the media. Please allow for the space for our Veterans Council, our knowledge keepers, and our chiefs. As my co-chair is approaching, I will now turn it off to her.
We will confirm that we're ready to proceed with the next item. We'll come back in 30 seconds. Okay, so while we're waiting, I just want to remind you that after the first items on the agenda this morning, we're going to go back to resolutions. We have a lot of resolutions to go through today. So I want to remind you that if you need some time to take care of yourself, we won't be taking many breaks, so feel free to go out of the room when you need, take water, grab some food, go outside, take some fresh air. So we just want to make sure that you take care of yourself, because here in the assembly room today it's going to be very busy. And also I want to acknowledge our sign language team that's always with us, Marsha Ireland, who is with us as well. And we will be proceeding very, very soon with our next guests, who are arriving very soon. Okay, so before we start, we will now call the meeting to order. Donc, nos prochains invités.
Our next guests, we have 5 guests. We will welcome the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the Honourable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, the Honourable Gary Ananda, Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Minister Arif Virani, Minister of Justice and Solicitor General of Canada, and the Honourable Dan Vandal, Minister of Northern Affairs.
We now welcome the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the Honourable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Indigenous Services, the Honourable Gary Ananda Sangari, Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, the Honourable Arif Virani, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and the Honourable Dan Vandal, Minister of Northern Affairs. So I will let the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau begin with his opening remarks.
Merci beaucoup. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to National Chief Cindy Woodhouse at Nippanak for inviting me and us to be here with you this morning. But thank you all for inviting us once again to be part of these important meetings. It has been many years that we've been coming to these and having these important conversations, and it is always a privilege to hear directly from you, in addition to all the conversations we end up having across the country in various places on so many different subjects. But it's really important for me and for the ministers to show up and take questions. So I'll just give a few remarks, then I'll turn it to each of the ministers, who will speak very, very briefly, because we know we want to get into questions from all of you. Back in 2015, I made a promise to change the approach of the federal government in regards to Indigenous peoples and First Nations. I promised that we would be there as a partner. I promised that we would take on a new way of working together that involves showing up, that involves welcoming you to be part of the conversations and the processes as we move forward, recognizing the challenges of decades, generations, and indeed centuries of colonial thinking by a federal government that didn't see Indigenous peoples as full partners and even viewed them as second-class citizens. This is the essence of reconciliation, understanding the work that we need to do together as partners in both building a future, but recognizing the impacts of the past on the present at the same time. And we laid out a better path forward, respect for First Nations sovereignty, true nation-to-nation relationships, and an unwavering commitment to truth and reconciliation. Il fallait absolument qu'on change.
We had to absolutely change Canada's approach with regard to Indigenous people. And it's not one government that decided it. It's all Canadians that decided this, that chose this in 2015. To change and to require the best engagement and relations with Indigenous peoples in this country. And it's something that this government has worked very hard.
And advocacy, we've accomplished a lot together. Particularly, highlights from this past year include establishing the National Council for Reconciliation. We are very close to passing the bill on the right to safe drinking water, C-61. We recognized Haida Nation's right to self-determination with C-16, and proper accountability and implementation of modern treaties being critical, which is why we've appointed a commissioner for modern treaties. We also recognize the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls situation remains a national emergency. We partnered with Manitoba so far on a red dress pilot, but there's much more to do. On police treatment of First Nations, we recognize that no one should feel unsafe in their communities, and that is the reality for far too many Indigenous people across this country. We need to do better collectively. I know we are engaging on that particular subject, and as well continuing the important conversations on developing First Nations policing so that you can be directly in control of your community's safety. Above all, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples remains a guiding principle for everything we do across government. But of course, for all that we've been able to do together, there is much more to do, and I feel the same urgency as you do to move forward, because every day that goes by, there are more problems that we haven't resolved, and there are more issues that we need to keep working on. But as we do it together, we will continue to show up, we will continue to listen, we will continue to work with you as true partners in the future of this beautiful land that we live on. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. I'll turn it over to Minister Virani now, Minister of Justice. Arif.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for opening us up in a good way. Thank you to National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nipanak and the AFN Executive Committee for having us here. And I just want to acknowledge, obviously, the loss that we all felt across the country with the loss of Senator Murray Sinclair this year and his tremendous leadership. I'm going to touch on three quick things as the Prime Minister is giving us marching orders to be pointed. Bill S-13 also received royal assent this fall, and that's a significant accomplishment because that bill adds a non-derogation clause component into all the interpretation of all federal legislation. And the critical piece about that is that it ensures that we will not derogate from Aboriginal and treaty rights protected under Section 35 of the Constitution, and will interpret every federal law in that manner, and that's guiding and instructive for courts. The second piece is the Indigenous Justice Strategy. What we do is we follow the marching orders that are given to us by the man to my left, to your right. When he gives us a mandate and he tells us in our mandate letter to go and do something, we work hard to try and do that. The Indigenous Justice Strategy is in my mandate letter. It is targeted about basically addressing the idea of systemic overrepresentation of Indigenous men, women, and youth in our justice system and in our correction system. We are in the final stages of developing that strategy. It has the potential to be transformative. It is informed by all of the leadership, wisdom, and expertise of all of you in terms of guiding us in that work. And it is very, very important to have it developed, implemented, and to roll it out as quickly as possible. Je tiens à souligner le dévouement de l'équipe de justice. I would also like to recognize the devotion of the justice team at the AFN, as well as all of those who are at the AFN meeting today. You have done a great work, essential work on this important document. Incredible work of Kim Murray, the special interlocutor who is appointed by our government to look into missing children, unmarked graves, and burial sites associated with the Indian residential schools. In a very touching and moving ceremony, she presented me with her final report. It is 4 volumes deep. It is 2,000 pages long. She received tremendous acknowledgement and recognition, as she should, for the very difficult and painful work she did over the course of 2 years. It is a detailed detailed document. We are reviewing it attentively. We're considering all of our approaches to responding to it in a manner that is comprehensive, that will address the needs of Indigenous people on this land. The most important thing is that everything we do in responding to her important work will be guided by Indigenous leadership and Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous views on what should be done with respect to the locations, the sites, the information, and how we proceed together on the path forward. On that note, I will end there and turn it over to my colleague, the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, Minister Patty Hajdu, to my right.
Well, thank you very much for an opportunity to say hello, bonjour, tanzi, kwe kwe this morning. I want to acknowledge the elders and the leaders and the youth in this room, so many of whom I've had a chance to meet with and work with over the last number of years. And I want to thank the leaders in particular for the challenging jobs that you do every single day for your communities. You're charting courses with all kinds of needs for your communities, but you're also answering the phone at 3 in the morning when community members are in crisis. And I want to acknowledge all of the work that you do every day on behalf of your members. Yeah, let's give everyone a I think that does deserve a round of applause. So I believe that as an elected leader with the federal government, one of the most important priorities, and I think really driven by the vision of the Prime Minister, is to work on ways that we reduce the colonialism that deeply impacts your everyday lives. And so it's been my honor to work on things that also include, recognition in official government documents like the Budget of Canada, that the Indigenous priorities are just as important as every other Canadian priority. And that's why last year it was so exciting for me to see that Indigenous on water. And the Prime Minister made a very ambitious commitment to lift all of the long-term drinking water advisories across this country. When we were elected, there were 145 in place. We've managed to prevent and lift almost all of those long-term drinking water advisories. We have 31 left, over 29 communities, with a plan in place for all of those to be lifted as well. But I have to say, all of this heavy lifting is not just the Government of Canada and the investments of the Government of Canada. It's your communities driving the infrastructure, the training, the recruitment of water operators, and you need a good partner. And Canada has stepped up to be a good partner in this work. The Prime Minister mentioned Bill C-61. This is, to me, one of the exciting pieces of work we've done together over the last years, and it hasn't been easy. This bill, as you know, was co-drafted with the input of many different partners, and I do want to thank the AFN National Chief, of course, the First Nations Advisory Council on Water, and Treaty 6, 7, and 8, who have significantly impacted how that water legislation looks now. And for the very first time in the history of this country, water will be declared a human right for First Nations people, and that is because of you and your fight and your determination. Now, I know that you're having a very vivid conversation about what to do next on child welfare, but I have to say, while you're doing that, we haven't stopped in ensuring your communities have the tools that you need to take back control of children and families services, and to be able to keep kids closer to home. And so, as of this fall, we've signed 11 coordination agreements with communities across the country, which will significantly reduce the number of kids in care and ensure that kids grow up in community, surrounded by the love, the culture, and the language that they so richly deserve. And that is, again, the work of communities. The government is there to enable, to partner, to support financially, but it's your laws, it's your work that has been able to realize those commitments, and we know that there will be more in the future. And I have to say that on top of that, we've been really excited about the investments in schools and the efforts of communities to improve, renovate, or build schools. That's why about 255 communities have received funding supporting around 38,000 students with either renovated or new facilities. In some cases, bringing education from kindergarten to grade 12 home. For the very first time, children can stay at at home for the entire of their high school education. And that is important because you know that graduation rates go up when kids are at home. You know, and I'm from Thunder Bay, Ontario, I know exactly how hard it is for families to send their kids away for education and for kids to be able to complete that education. This is a path we have to stay on as a country. We have to continue to make sure that regional education agreements are signed, that schools are built, and that kids stay at home and get the education they deserve. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to end just on housing, and I want to tell you, no matter where I go, I hear about the growth of your communities, the challenge you're having on housing, and we are investing. Since 2015, we've increased targeted investments in housing by over 1,300%. That's $2.43 billion of the $4.1 billion committed, and there's more to do. I want you to know that I see you. 15 people in a house is not conducive to learning, to growing, to being able to sleep, to be able to study, to be able to work. And so we have to keep pushing to make sure that all of the departments of Canada, and I'm really pleased to see infrastructure and CMHC and so many other departments step up to this task, that we close that gap for once and for all. So thank you so much for all of the learning that you've given me over the last 3 years. It's a distinct honor to work with you. Thank you. Garrett. And now to my colleague, Gary Anatagri.
Thank you, Kwe, bonjour, Eileen, and hello. I am so excited to be here this morning, and I want to thank you for the warm welcome, and let me acknowledge that we're gathered here on the Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. And I also want to acknowledge the National Chief, as well as the many chiefs and leaders that are here, along with elders, for this very important gathering. And I want to give a very special shout out to the youth that are here, many of whom I had the privilege of meeting yesterday, and I look forward to the great conversations that we will continue to have. Given that time is very limited, I'm going to just talk about a couple of major things that we're working on. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge all those who are working in the front lines, especially with unmarked graves, as well as missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit individuals. As I travel the country and as I meet many people who are working frontline, I just want to express both how inspiring it is, but also how difficult the work that you undertake. And I just want to assure you that as a government, we will continue to walk with you on this path. It's a very difficult path, and I know those of you who put your lives on the line each and every day to support each other, to support communities, to uplift your nations, are truly the warriors that are seeking both safety, security, but also answers for the losses that your communities have endured over many generations. So I want to just acknowledge you and the work that you do. This year, we've had a number of significant progress in our path to self-determination, and I just want to highlight a couple of very important things. First is the recognition of the Haida Nation as the government of the Haida Nation. And I don't know if anybody's here from Haida, but I just want to say congratulations. This is a very important role that you have played in the leadership of making sure that your nation is self-determining. At the same time, we have initialed 3 modern treaties in British Columbia through the BC treaty process, and that include Comox, Kitsillas, and Kitsim-Kalem, and we were able to initial those treaties earlier this summer, and they're well on the way towards consultation and eventually signing. I also want to acknowledge the work both in Nova Scotia as well as Ontario with the Mi'kmaq and Anishinaabe education sectoral self-government agreements, which will transform, and in the case of Ontario, transform education and outcomes for First Nations people in Northern Ontario. So I just want to acknowledge the work that everybody has done to get us to this point. As we speak, the Parliament will be considering C-77. This is the Commissioner of Modern Treaty Implementation, and it is something that many modern treaty holders have been working on for many years. This will add to the work of Minister Varani in passing Bill S-13 on the non-derogation clause. I want to thank everyone who has walked on this path to get us here. But today I want to highlight one major reform that we want to announce, and that is with respect to additions to reserve. And this is something that both AFN and many of you have been working on for many, many years, and the frustration that exists within communities on the speed and the time it takes for us to approve the ATRs, we've heard you, and we've heard the feedback, and based on that, in addition to the two major changes that we announced earlier this year, we want to advise that there are 7 additional changes that we are introducing today, and I'll just highlight a few of them. First, it'll be making environmental site assessment requirements more flexible, streamlining the application process, refining the dispute resolution provisions, dropping restrictions on improvements to proposed reserve lands, clarifying the 3-month waiting period for comments on proposals, and address the requirement of municipal service agreements to be in place prior to the ATR, which will significantly reduce requirements for joint reserves. So these are very important changes that we're proposing today, and I look forward to the questions and comments from all of you here. Thank you, Miigwech, and really good to see everyone.
Tansi Boshu, it's great to be here. Collaboration, partnership, and co-development are principles of the work that we all do, but something that I've brought forward. Partnership and collaboration in northern Manitoba is exemplified through the Arctic Gateway Group. Arctic Gateway own and operate the Port of Churchill, Canada's only northern seaport that's connected to a rail line, and it's on Hudson's Bay. The Arctic Gateway Group is a partnership of 41 First Nations and Bayline communities, all from northern Manitoba. They own and operate Hudson's Bay and the port, which is the only affordable year-round, all-weather transportation. The rail line is absolutely essential for supply chains. It's essential for local food security and regional connectivity. If the rail line goes down, people do not eat. So we have formed a strategic partnership with First Nations in northern Manitoba to make sure that that rail line is sustainable. It's through partnerships like this, we believe, that Canada wants. It will First Nation ownership, which is incredibly important in the north. In downtown Winnipeg, in the urban area, we've created another strategic collaboration with Southern Chiefs organization. We're supporting Southern Chiefs in its quest to transform the iconic Hudson's Bay building in downtown Winnipeg, 700,000 square feet it's been empty for 15 years, probably more. It's going to be transformed into 350 affordable housing units, a health and healing center, future governance house for Southern Chiefs. It's the sort of model that we can use throughout Canada. There's lots of work to do, but we've already accomplished a lot through collaboration, through partnership, and to co-development. And I want to end by giving you an example of how we try to be more responsive to your issues. When we were all elected in 2015, the work of the Minister of Indigenous Services, Patty Hajdu, of Crown Indigenous Relations, Gary Anandasangri, and myself, Northern Affairs, was all done by one minister. Now just imagine what a difficult job that minister had to respond to all of your important issues throughout a vast country of Canada. One of the initiatives our government moved on was to separate those tasks, the workload, into 3 ministries, and I believe we've been more effective in addressing your issues, and that's something that's significant that not a lot of people know at this point. But I think it's worth noting in a forum like this. Miigwech.
Thank you. We now have a question period. We have about 20 minutes for the question period. What we'll do is we'll start with microphone number 1, then microphone number 2, and if there's questions on the Zoom, we'll take the question on the Zoom and we'll go back after to the microphones. And we'll take 3 questions at a time, and then the ministers and the Prime Minister will answer. I do remind you that we have about 20 minutes for this question period. I see a lot of you chiefs are in line to ask questions. So you do have the right for your 4 minutes each. If you don't need all of those 4 minutes, what we'll do is you can stop your question and we will go to the other microphone. So we'll start with microphone number 1.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Chief Cold Lake First Nation, Kelsey Jacko, and I wish you can have more time than 20 minutes because we have numerous speakers at the mic, but I'll just start. Mr. Prime Minister, when you were first elected, you made the statement that no relationship is more important than the ones with First Nations, yet your government has done everything to undermine our treaties, including co-development legislation that impact our inherent and treaty rights without rights holders at the table. I will start with Bill C-61 because water is life and your government is legislating it. We have never given up our jurisdiction and we must protect our waters. Your legislation won't do that. Bill C-61 constrains our rights and limits our jurisdiction. We hope that our treaty bilateral table is not a publicity stunt and marks instead authentic recognition of the true spirit and intent of the sacred covenant, the treaties. Our treaty implementation, we are rights holders, and you cannot determine our treaties, as your government did not enter treaties with us. However, you do have the legal duty to uphold the honor of the Crown. You cannot delegate your legal duty to consult to the AFN, manipulating our consent. You must meet with the rights holders of this land, which includes all First Nations directly. Considering treaty, we want to let you know we will be seeking some redress on the issue of Canada having delegated our resources to the provinces by the way of the NRTA through the UNDA Action Plan. An OSA declaration, you should recognize it. You recognize the NRTA is not your doing and welcome collaboration, pushing back and uncooperative provinces. Also considering treaty First Nations should not be in the Migration Act. We are not immigrants. We are the first people of this land. We should be exempt, utilize, and recognize the J Treaty border crossing. If your government decides to fix this, the treaty organization should be your co-designer. No offense to the AFN, but those who are rights holders should not take over this work on the border crossing group. We have an organization, Treaty 1 to 11. Please recognize it. Much of your legislation impacting treaty rights uses a term Indigenous. Please use First Nations. In these situations, the Métis and Innu are our brothers, but those words have different meanings when you're talking about our treaty rights. Now I know as chief, my constituents always give me shit, so I'm done giving you shit. I called you out a bit last assembly, but it's out of frustration. But I meant the invitation. Come to our territories, meet our people, learn their stories. I will welcome you. And I do have letters for you and your staff. Please accept them. Masi Cho, and I'll just leave it at that since there's numerous speakers at the mic.
Thank you, Chief. We will now go to microphone number 2.
Good morning. I'm no stranger to you. As you know, our treaties are very important to us. And our treaties are with the Imperial Crown, not with Canada. Canada is given the responsibility to fulfill those promises of the Crown to our peoples. And as you know, when we entered into treaty, Canada assumed title to our territories and our resources, which is not true. You have yet to prove to us how you attained that title. When we meet with your ministers, they come, we talk to them, and they're off. They might hear our words, but they don't listen, because nothing has changed. We, as people, know that Canada, in utilizing the Indian Act and other means like the 60 Scoop, try to get rid of our people so you can legitimize your title to your assumed title to our territories. and you say you want reconciliation. Well, let's deal with the truth. You want true reconciliation, you come and talk to the rights holders, as Chief Jacko said. We are the ones who are party to our international treaties that have a say, not Canada and not the AFN. We are the ones that can establish a good working relationship with you, and I mean a good government-to-government relationship. If you look at the genocidal tactics that you used all these years, our peoples have suffered because of that. I don't have to repeat what Canada did to us. Our people are suffering, they're living in poverty on this great land that the Creator gave us. Our people should be prospering from this, not the immigrants, the Canadians. We should be. Today, and I can assure you, our peoples are not immigrants. The rest are. We agreed to share our territories for settlement purposes only, and that has to be respected. And you talk about reconciliation. Well, you're still using your legislations to assimilate us, and that's to get rid of us, to take away our right of self-determination. You look at the Crown promised that there will always be Indians and lands reserved for Indians. Your Land Management Act is taking that away. Your Tax Commission is taking that away. Your Financial Management Act is taking that away. Your C-92 is taking that away, trying to disperse our peoples into the dominant society, which is going to kill our identity. You have taken our languages away. Now we're regaining and learning our own languages again. Our right of self-determination has been totally damaged by the Canadian government, and not just you, all those other governments that were in place. You all have the same agenda, and that's to legalize your assumed title to our territories, which we have never consented to giving up. I spoke my language to the ministers, to you ministers. They didn't understand what I was saying. How do you think our people felt at treaty making? They couldn't understand, so our understanding is different from the Canadian. So we need to sit down today. And Mr. Prime Minister, you, I don't know, since you got in, we have invited you to come to our nations for Treaties 1 to 11 to sit down and clarify our relationship with you. And we have a right to government. Last time I raised it...
Thank you, Proxy. Can you summarize
You started talking about... Can you not take my time? You started talking about your self-government policy, which undermines our right to government. So we invite you to come again to Treaties 1 to 11, August 22nd, 2025. We have already invited the Governor General, who's supposed to be a representative of the Crown, and we'd like to know what her role is and how she's going to help to bring forth the promises of the Crown to us. So we hope, I hope someday the Canadian government will wake up and truly respect our rights as Indigenous peoples, the non-immigrants of this country, to our land of bountiful, and our people don't suffer anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Proxy Crowchild. We will now take a question on the Zoom. Chief Lee Spannen.
Councillor, Direction 11, and Jawa and Squash Lease Pennant, Evan Selectco in the Nation, Interior British Columbia. I'd like to thank the host nations for allowing the important work to happen in their territory. I'm talking to you from the unceded territory of the Nlaka'pin and the Syilx people. I have questions for Prime Minister and Minister Haydee and Minister Adesanya. First, Prime Minister, you talked about 2015 showing up and working nation to nation. And you talked about sovereignty, Bill C-61, UNDRIP, and policing. And so did Minister Haydee on reducing colonialism, recognizing Indigenous priorities, lifting the drinking water advisories, Bill C-61. What I didn't hear was children and families. I have two questions. The first one was asked on numerous occasions without responses or definition. What is the funding provided to BC Ministry of Child and Family Development by Indigenous Services Canada for Child and Family Services? Second question, how will Canada act with urgency upon the discriminatory practice of off-reserve funding? In the past, Cold Indian Band has had unresolved concerns and issues with the Government of Canada. We have invited the Prime Minister numerous of times to Coldwater and to the Nicola Valley to meet with the Nicola 5 chiefs. It took 6 months before one of his ministers actually responded to that invitation. Knowing that PM will not come to our territories to speak with our leadership, we again invite PM and Minister Haydee and Minister Adesanya to the Nicola Valley to meet with our leadership, as well as to meet with the Coldwater Indian Band Chief and Council on our unresolved concerns and issues that we have. Knowing that there's an upcoming federal election and that you're here talking about a platform when you talked about past issues with First Nations across Canada, how much of those actions are going to actually happen from your party? So again, the invitation going out to you, Mr. Prime Minister, and your ministers that are in attendance with you today to come and talk with our leaderships of the Nicola 5 chiefs, as well as the Coldwater Indian Band Chief and Council. So hopefully I get some answers today on the questions from you and your ministers. Dr. Jam, thank you for giving me the time to ask my questions.
Thank you, Chief. I will now let Prime Minister Justin Trudeau answer the question.
Yeah, I'll briefly start and then pass it over to the ministers. First of all, there's a really, really important reflection that everyone in this room has to have about how Indigenous peoples, how First Nations specifically in this case, want to organize themselves. It is not for the Government of Canada to say who should speak for whom. And that is something that we have been there as a partner in resourcing and investing in helping reflect on how you choose to govern yourselves and organize yourselves. The AFN exists as a body that has gathered you here in Ottawa. If you want to look at something other than the AFM as a way of organizing yourselves, we will be there to work with whatever you decide is right for you. The time when people in Ottawa, however well-meaning, can decide how you must go about organizing yourselves is long past, and that's a good thing. That's why there are many nations across this country who have stepped out from under the AFN, stepped out from under the Indian Act, and are choosing to sign self-governing treaties with us. And our goal as a country is to end the Indian Act, to see it finished, to see every First Nations community, every First Nations nation, every Indigenous community and nation determine what kind of relationship you want with the federal government and with Canada. So I know over the past number of years, the fact that after decades of federal governments not showing up, after decades of federal governments not putting money on the table, not in any substantial way like we have over the past 9 years, the imperative was very much on just being seen. But now you are working on, as you need to, figuring out what the path forward is for the next generations of engagement with the federal government. And we are here as a government to work with you on that. And it's not easy because, quite frankly, for generations, nobody has given you the space, nobody has granted you the legitimate and even recognized your legitimate rights to determine your own future. We are here to say, we're working with you, we want to know, and it won't be easy and it won't be quick, because these are things that will impact deeply on your communities, not just now, but for generations, as you well know. But we will continue to show up on that, and I appreciate both the invitations and the engagement. I travel across the country all the time and meet with many different First Nations, Métis, Inuit groups, and sign agreements and move forward. But a lot of those things are, the first steps are working with ministers to define and find ways to move forward quickly. Because if I'm showing up and we end up not moving appreciably forward, that increases frustration on your sides, and your people say, okay, the Prime Minister's coming, this is wonderful, we can solve this now, and we sit down and we start negotiations that may take months. There's something that misses on that. But I am glad to come to celebrations, I'm glad to sit down and work with you, and I will continue to. I'll turn briefly over to Minister Hajdu, I think, for some of the responses on this as well.
Well, I think, Prime Minister, you've done a really good job in describing how the journey on water evolved from largely led by AFN to including the voices of so many different First Nations partners, independent First Nations, Treaty 6, 7, and 8, who were very vocal at the beginning of the journey that AFN could not speak for them, did not speak for them, and furthermore, they felt completely disrespected by Canada. And this week, we signed Treaty 6, 7, and 8, a treaty on a table on water and related water infrastructure, so those conversations are formalized and ongoing. I know there's a lot of questions about Bill C-61, but just as a very high level, it actually increases the control that First Nations people have over setting rules and regulations to protect water, increases capacity of First Nations to have the ability to monitor and protect source waters that feed their systems, and increases your voice in a co-developed way to determine how much funding you should receive. This is a first in Canada, by the way. You know how the Government of Canada determines usually for you how much you're going to receive in funding for water. No more. This bill says that the Government of Canada actually can't do that, that we have to work with First Nations on a nation-to-nation basis to make sure that the formula to protect and provide water actually is sufficient. So I'm excited about this work. Does it mean the bill is perfect? I don't think any bill is perfect. I think there's always room for increased conversation, but it is light years better than what was there before. And it is due to the work and the warriors that have fought so hard for this. On child welfare, I know that you are having a very vigorous conversation about the vote and the lack of the consensus and the failure of the vote on the $47.8 billion final agreement. I have been disappointed. To be clear with you, obviously this was what we felt was a very good step forward. It actually exceeded the requests of the CHRT. We haven't waited, by the way, for the conclusion of that agreement to make significant investments in children's success, including, for example, supporting post-majority care and a number of other spaces that you know and you've been calling for a long time. But I will just say this. We share a common objective, and the common objective is that your children succeed. Canada needs every single person to reach their full potential if we're going to meet the challenges ahead. So we'll continue to have these conversations together.
So I just want to let you know that we've already used our 20 minutes, so we'll do only one more round of questions. We're already prolonging the question period. I'm sorry, Chief Bonspiel, I see your disappointment. But we'll do a round, so you will have the right to have your question. We will start on microphone number 1.
That's it. The time is gotten, Justin Trudeau. Nanaskaman beta meagutans. Bentotayak. Ichigewan and Mutamak. Tinimina Agucha get the magistic. Otavitsi act the Gipit Namanoma get the Tuskananak, Hegagavici, Guauk, Agipsquagua Cape. At Yaganasiman. Good afternoon, good morning, Prime Minister. My name is David Monias. I'm Chief of the Nation of Pemichagamak, a sovereign nation. I want to remind you that we were sovereign before we were treaty, but we invited you to come with us many times, and somehow it never got to you. So I'm here, standing here before you. I'm going to be asking for my counselor to hand you a document, if you don't mind, without the police getting in the way. And I spoke to you by phone before, and we were talking about our sovereign rights, talking about our treaty rights, that they need to be implemented. They need to be respected and honored, not just in words of promises, but in terms of action, because we do want action from you guys to make sure you recognize our sovereignty, to make sure you recognize the treaties. It was just a relationship document. You, when I spoke to you last time, you said Ottawa, Canada cannot do it for us, that we have to do it for ourselves, but you would support us and you would help us and so forth. When that was on rapid housing, I'm still waiting for my houses that you said that I would have. Today we submitted a document for a school, a new school, where about 400 of our children are not going to school because we refuse to send them out to the urban centers. We don't want the day schools. We don't want residential school settings anymore. We need funding, but it's beyond the funding capacity of Manitoba region. Those people are not helping us like you said they would. We want you to live up to your part of the agreement that in the treaties, education treaty, our people need to make sure they're educated. I'm hoping that I'm going to be meeting with your representatives this afternoon, and I'm hoping that they'll be finding solutions for us to make sure we move forward. So with that, I'm going to ask one of my councillors for the remaining of my time to speak to you about healthcare, and her name's Councillor Brenda Frog.
Good morning. I'm honored to be in your presence. I've been a nurse for over 20 years in our northern communities. You need to do a complete review on a healthcare delivery to our First Nations communities. You have a high turnover rate on your Indigenous Service Canada nurses. They need better support. You need to review the nursing agency healthcare delivery model. You're spending billions on nursing agencies to come to our community. The care is inconsistent and fragmented. you need to do better to support your frontline workers. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And just one last comment. I'm going to read out what I wrote here. Canada must not practice denialism or diminish the realities of what occurred in residential schools, day schools, 60 schools. Denying or minimizing these atrocities is a direct insult to survivors, families, and communities who continue to live with intergenerational trauma caused by these institutions. Denialism has no place in Canada's journey on reconciliation. To move forward, Canada must confront its past honestly, without excuses, have measures. The unmarked graves are not just historical remnants, they are crime scenes, and they are a testament to the lives of stolen lives, cultural genocide to steal our land, and also speaks to the resilience of the indigenous people. That's why we're still here. Truth and justice are non-negotiable. We will accept nothing less. Land back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Can we open microphone number 2, please?
Second, Prime Minister and Ministers. Aguiron de Yunjats. My name is Grand Chief Victor Aguiron de Bonspiel from Gunnesadauga and Mohawk Territory. My questions are, when I was elected in 2021 as the Grand Chief of my community, I ran on a platform of transparency and accountability and inclusion for my community. And I began an investigation of fraud into the pandemic spending of my community's council back then. It's been 4 years now that investigation has been going on, and it's with the Sûreté du Québec who's leading the investigation. And the federal government has yet to be involved in that investigation. It's coming to a close now. It's had 3 extensions, and I have yet to hear from the federal government on what they think about their money being spent. Almost $6 million was sent to my community, and $3.5 million went into salaries. One person was earning up to $27,000 every 2 weeks on her salary as a vice chief in my community. And I have nothing to hear from anybody on your side, Mr. Prime Minister. I would like this investigation to come to a close and that there be retribution for my community, that these people be prosecuted and not swept under the rug. I want that done for my community. Also, and this fraud investigation, for your information, was put up to embezzlement now. It's been upgraded, not by myself, but by the investigators. So I really hope that there's retribution for my community. Secondly, political interference by your ministers into my communities and Mohawk Council's ongoings and our toxic environment. Your minister, Ms. Adju, had sent a letter to my council recognizing their quorum over me, the elected spokesperson and Grand Chief of my community, and giving them that recognition of government authority over my community. My community is a custom band. We're not Indian Act. We don't follow that. We follow custom. So I follow custom and I run under my people's authority. And I'm asking through my community that you ask and tell your minister to revoke that letter, recognizing my authority and spokesperson for my community. I'm demanding that. Secondly, I'm looking here that my Iroquois caucus community would like to have you come to our next meeting, which we're having in next month, January, from the 15th to the 17th in Akwesasne, Mohawk Territory. So we'll have an open invitation to you, Mr. Minister. We'd also like to demand a public apology for you putting your army against our communities of the Mohawk nations during the Oka crisis. We would like an open apology and written apology that you sent your army to attack our nation. Thank you. I'm going to split my time with these lovely ladies here. Good
afternoon, Mr. My name is Martha Martin. I've been waiting for this moment for 4.5 years. I am the mother of Chantal Moore and Mike Martin. I have been across this country and I've met with many mothers who are losing their children to your policing. It has taken 4.5 years to come, and just to have 2 minutes. we're here to talk, how do you say everything in 2 minutes? I've lost 2 of my children. My daughter was shot and killed by your policing. My son died in police custody 5 months after. And I'm still 4 years later waiting to hear from a coroner for a case that's open. Mothers are tired of burying their children. So many of us mothers have come together. We've tried to reach out through media to meet with you so you could come and hear our stories. This is like 2 of us who are a small percentage. We did a press release yesterday, and you know what? There was another shooting by the time we were done that press release in Vancouver. How many more of our people have to die at the hands of your police? We've come to say it's enough. Like, what are you going to do about it? It's time to sit down with us, and it's time to start making those changes.
Hi, my name is Claudette, and I'm the mother of Regis Kuczynski-Paquette, who was thrown off the building at 100 Hyde Park in Toronto 2 days after George Floyd passed away. When George Floyd passed away, you took a knee for him. What have you did for any of us Canadians when our children passed away? So why I'm here today, we want police reform. We do not want the police out there shooting our children. We want you to sit down with us and have a meeting with the families. We're grieving here, and we are getting no justice. Every single day, one of our children are being killed by the police. Another thing, we do not want police investigating police. That is so stupid, okay? Because before you became a police officer, you were a civilian, okay? So why don't we hire civilians to investigate police officers, have them trained properly. We cannot take this anymore. The killing needs to stop. We were in Ottawa a couple of times, right at Parliament. You never once, ever came out. We voted for you. We are the Canadians here. Americans do not vote for you. So take care of this country, please.
The mother of John Wells. On September 17, 2024, my son wasn't even written the rights. And his last words were, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. They killed my boy. They murdered my son. And today, I have to live with that. For the rest of my life, I am shattered. I am broken. When is this ever going to stop? My son didn't deserve that. He was only 42 years old. He was only 42 when they killed him. That was racism, what they did to him. That is not okay. That's not okay. My son is gone. I have to live with that. I have to, every day I wake up, knowing that I'm never, ever going to see my son or talk to him. That is so devastating to get a call from the tactic team in Calgary telling me my son is never going to come home to me. I'm never going to see him again. He had a lot of goals. He had a lot of dreams to accomplish. But the policing shortened his life, and that's not okay. That's not okay. I have to live with the broken heart, the shattered of my soul. Every morning I wake up and I ask, help me to get through this day. so that policing needs to be done. Something needs to be done. They're targeting all the Native people throughout Canada, and that's not fair. And I'm speaking for all the mothers that cannot be here to speak, and for them mourning their kids, getting a call. That is devastating, so devastating.
Shame on Canada! Shame on Canada!
I have one more thing. As you can imagine, being a parent, what do you think this little girl who's got no more mother, she is terrified of your police, terrified. She sees the guy, all she sees, you know what, is a gun. She is terrified of your policemen. What are you going to do to rectify this and to make this right? Come and sit with our families. We invite you to come and sit with us. Hear our stories. Hear about who they were as people, what goals they had, what struggles in life they had. They were human beings too. They were not just people who were disposable because your policemen think they're not of value. Please, we're asking you to come and sit and meet with us, talk with us, hear our stories.
Please have your police officers retrained, because they're not doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharings. I will now let Prime Minister Trudeau answer.
First of all, I want to thank the mothers who came forward and who have been sharing their grief and their loss not just with us here, but for many, many months and in some cases years. No mother should ever have to bury her child, let alone 2 children, let alone more. So many communities have been affected by tragedies that need to stop. I agree. I have heard stories across the country, and I will continue to engage and listen to people as they share their stories, but I will also committed to doing everything in my power as a government to try and fix this, to try and change and address the systemic discrimination, the built-in colonialism, the racism that continues to exist within our systems. These are things that should not be. We're in a world where good people need to continue to step up, as you are, and demand better. And people who are in positions of leadership and authority need to work every single day to do better and to be better. We're in a very, very imperfect world and are reminded of it regularly. There is deep injustice in the world, and the choices that all of us have to make, and all of you in this room as leaders, like all of us and everyone in any position of community leadership, political leadership, or anything, needs to reflect on how we move forward, how we address these things. These are the conversations that we're having, nation to nation, community to community, conversations in which our ministers are deeply, deeply engaged to try and counter the injustices and tragedy in the world. And all we can do now is pledge that we will be there. We will work with you. We will hear your pain. We will support the path forward that you see to make sure we create a world in which no mother has to grieve her child. That's my pledge to you. That's part of why I stand here today. That's why I continue to believe in this country and its future, and know that everyone needs to be part of shaping that future. All of you. Your role here today, but your role back in your communities as leaders remains essential. And we will continue to be here with you. That's the pledge I have, and that's what we will continue to do. Merci. Merci, Joe. Cook's Jim.
Thank you. National Chief has gifts for the Prime Minister and the ministers. I'm sorry, the Prime Minister really has to leave. I'm very sorry about that.
Do you hear that cry over there? I'm under a 30-year boil of water factory. You better. 30 years. We are not a campaign trail. I'm here December 4th.
Can you open microphone number 2, please?
Hello, my name is Natalie Starlight Fraser, and I am a youth on proxy for Skoluk First Nation. I want to thank Chief Chapman for having me here. I am a youth that grew up in care, and I just want to speak on some matters. First Nation children in care in Canada has a higher representation than those that were in residential school. Alongside the high representation is an increasing number of deaths of our children dying while in care. A gap that I observe is regional child and family programs not respecting Bill C-92 and minimum family standards set out by the Canadian government. Regions see these standards as an option, and our families continue to be harmed in the child welfare system, as no one is holding regions, provinces accountable to these acts that you are supposed to protect them. I ask that you ensure that the next final settlement agreement does not discriminate against off-reserve kids in care, as regional child and family service programs are getting away with the mistreatment of our children and families, resulting in death. What is going to be done to hold regions accountable to Bill C-92, minimum family standards, and other provisions that were set out by Canada to protect our families from the child welfare system? And my question for you, Trudeau, what would your message be to First Nation children and youth currently experiencing the child welfare system? And I would like to proceed the rest of my time to Mary.
Thank you. Definitely needed to hear the youth.
I'd like to answer that youth first, and then maybe we can take your question. The pattern of child and family services across the country, provincial child and family services primarily, taking kids out of their communities, kids at risk, out of their communities, out of their languages, out of their identity, and putting them with non-Indigenous families, was a modern iteration of residential schools, taking kids from their families, their communities. That's why we pledged to work with First Nations on C-92 to put an end to the removal of kids at risk from their communities. And this is something that we believe in deeply, something we co-developed with you, something that we are funding in places across the country where the systems are built up. There remains a huge challenge in working with the provincial child and family services agencies, some of which are coming on as partners of making sure that we are protecting kids who are vulnerable while at the same time allowing them to grow in their language, their culture, their communities. But there is much more to do. We reached a final settlement agreement that has been rejected by the AFN. We continue to be here with a lot of money on the table to work with you to move forward, to make sure that kids right now have opportunities to get better care, because we can't talk about the future unless we're taking care of kids in the present. So I thank you for your words, I thank you for your leadership, and we will continue to put children first in everything that we do. That's what we are here for.
Take the next. I'm chief proxy for Stilaco. I just wanted a few things, and really I commend our young person here for her courageousness. I'm kind of a little bit of surprise that you were disappointed that the draft final settlement agreement didn't pass, because it was a great agreement for Canada, was not for our children today and those not yet born. That's why Canada was disappointed. I'm seriously, in this era of jurisdiction, and I don't know how that was okay that the BC and other provinces would cede their decision-making to another entity and to another province when it came to governance within the final settlement agreement. In BC, we guard our right to the free, prior, and informed consent. We guard our authority to speak. On November 21st, the CHRT tribunal letter decision was ordered Canada to uphold Jordan's principle. The tribunal also ordered Canada to mediate and consult with all parties, noting that BC could only participate if all the parties agreed. Yesterday, we found out that Canada opposes the First Nations Leadership Council participation in this process. We ask that you publicly retract the opposition and let our BC voices be heard, because our children deserve that. I also want to talk about that same matter, that you also publicly commit that you're not going to be seeking a judicial review on the November 21st tribunal letter decision on Canada's non-compliance on Jordan's principle. We're asking Canada also for a renewed negotiations mandate and to negotiate in a fair, just, and transparent manner to end discrimination now, but also in the future and for those not yet born. We don't want the same mistakes repeated in the flawed final settlement agreement. We want to make sure that you do better. You've said you're going to do better. Well, let's get the best minds that you have, the best negotiators of Canada. I don't want to be sitting with the B or the C team. We need to have people like Mark Miller, perhaps even yourself, to sit there, because this is historical, making the historical event that's happening. We all look forward to making this world a better place for our children. We are willing to make history together. We are willing to ensure that the final settlement agreement is good not only for our children now, but is the best that we can do for those not yet born, and we commit to working with you. Masai.
I'm going to turn to Minister Haidu to speak.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the question on Jordan's principle. And look, the reality is that we are the government that stepped up to honor the CHRT's requirement to fulfill Jordan's principle. And over the last number of years, $8.1 billion worth of products and services have been spent to support First Nations children to have everything that they need to thrive and to close those gaps that have existed for First Nations children for far too long. The program has grown at rates that I don't think any one of us could have expected. And in fact, what we have committed to doing is working with all parties to determine what is exactly a priority. Many of you have talked to me about the backlog of cases and the backlog of approvals, for example. And if everything is a priority, of course, it's hard to determine then what comes first. And so we've had a challenge with the intake process, with determining what really is the most urgent. And we can't do that alone as Canada, and we know that. And so we're going to continue to work with our partners on a path forward to make sure that kids still get the care that they need, but that we do it in an organized way so that really urgent requests are not buried under a mountain of other requests that may not be as urgent. This is work we all have to do, by the way, because this program, as you know, even though it's ordered by the CHRT, really needs to be run well so that Canada is proud of it, so that you're all proud of it. So it's something that doesn't end up in the crosshairs of the opposition parties, who will be looking for ways to undermine Jordan's principle, to undermine the support that this Liberal government has made for First Nations kids across the country. So I'm counting on doing that work with all of you. These are difficult conversations, to be sure, but I think that we've had tremendous success under Jordan's principle, making sure kids get what they need.
Thank you. Can we open microphone number 1, please?
Bonjour, thank you. My name is Chief Chris Monias from the Skandaga First Nation. My community members are here, plus I got a couple of my councils here to support what I'm saying. In 1980, in 2018, you stood here promising us that we're going to get clean drinking water. It's already 2024. We're on 10,900 days. That's 29 years, 10 months, and 4 days of our boil water advisory. The longest in Canada. We're the poster boys and people of long-term drinking water. We don't see an end in sight. Although we were trying to upgrade our water plant, it hasn't been working at all. It's been a total failure. We've been under a state of emergency for suicide crisis, mental health and addictions, boil water advisories, so many and so on. Things that affect our quality of life. I didn't want to come here yelling, but when you walked away there, I wanted to have a good dialogue. I hate yelling. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to do that, but to be heard. Anyway, we need to improve our quality of life for our people. We need to, every year, I'm almost bringing children home in coffins because we don't have high schools in the community. Almost every month, I'm bringing elders home because we don't have care facilities in our community. Every last January 2, I took my best friend home because he couldn't do home dialysis and he got lonely and passed away. I took him home from Thunder Bay Hospital in a coffin because he couldn't do home dialysis because of the boil water advisory, which he was approved to do. We can't keep on living like this. You can't keep on extracting our resources and expect us to live in poverty. You can't make decisions without us. The land, the water in our area, the children, is our jurisdiction. Nobody, I mean nobody, will make that decisions on our behalf. It's all Niskandaga. We assert our jurisdiction.
And we agree. We agree. And that's why we passed UNDRIP legislation. That's why we work with you and why we are charting a path forward. And yes, there is a lot of work to do. We recognize that. On boil water advisories, when we came into office, there were 109 boil water advisories, in long-term boil water advisories across the country. We lifted 140 or so. We have stopped lots of short-term advisories from becoming long-term advisories, and on the 30 or so left, there is a plan and funding for all of them. And I'll turn to Minister Haidu specifically on your. I'll turn to Minister Haidu specifically on your case because I know she's been following up directly with you on that. Patty.
Well, thanks, Chief Muniz, and it was great to see you a few days ago. And as you know, we've been meeting every few months to make sure that Niskandaga stays in the center of the work that we're doing on water. You were one of the litigants in the class action lawsuit that we settled for over $8 billion. And thank you for your leadership in fighting for clean water, not just for Niskandaga, but for the whole country. In fact, that was one of my first jobs, as you know, is being on camera with you, talking about the harms that you talked about to your community. Because as many non-First Nations people don't know, lack of access to water has profound and lasting impacts, and you've shared your own personal story with me many times. It's super disappointing to me that the plant that was installed not even a decade ago doesn't deliver clean water. And you know we have an engineering firm working with your community. You are directing that work, but they've identified deficiencies. We've committed to ensuring all of those deficiencies are rectified. And I wrote you a letter, as you know, to commit to the design of a new plant. And I understand that testing is underway right now. Furthermore, we'll be there for Neskantaga. I have committed to you that we'll keep meeting for as long as it takes to get the long-term boil water advisory lifted. And that is my word, and I have lived up to my word ever since we've known each other. So we'll continue to do this work, but I will say I am also, and this is a warning shot to all contractors out there, I'm watching, and I am appalled at the way that First Nations communities are ripped off when millions of dollars are invested to build plants that don't deliver the water that they have committed to deliver to you. And I have, as you know, with you, talked about the many different ways that we might address that. But to all contractors, many who lobby me every single day, we're watching. Because it's unacceptable that Neskantaga got ripped off, and we will continue to make sure that that does not happen ever again.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Aidu, Minister Ananda Sangari, Minister Virani, and Minister Vandal for staying longer. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your time. You had used your time. I'm very sorry. We do have very important resolutions for our children to discuss.
I am a youth, and I Prime Minister, come to the
We do have very important resolutions for our children to address.
Don't walk away from us. Hey! Keep our picture off. We're not a campaign trail.
Thank you. I will now leave the microphone to Adam for the next steps.
Thank you very much, Veronique, our youth co-chair, and I'd like to commend our youth co-chair for helping us and maneuvering us, navigating us through those discussions. Just a couple of things after that discussion. From here, we can see the passion, we can see the emotion, and the strong advocacy from chiefs from across the country on behalf of your nations, and I commend you for that. I also would like to acknowledge and thank the Prime Minister for coming back and taking several more questions from the Assembly floor. So, miigwech. We also know that we had citizens speak very passionately with emotion. I just want to let you know that our Knowledge Keepers are here available. The Knowledge Keepers Council is here. We also have the co-chairs of the Knowledge Keepers Council that are up here at the front with us, and Charles Hume is here. He is available to be there with you. If you require another smudge, the smudge is available. Supports are here. So, miigwech. So, delegates, chiefs and proxy representatives, it's now 25 after 11. We do have a lot of decisions, discussions to get through for the rest of today. A reminder, we do have a hard stop at 4 p.m., so we'd like to start the closing protocols roughly 3:45. But again, we have a number of resolutions and decisions that need to be made. So we would like to, at this point, continue on. I do recognize that a number of the doors are open. A lot of people were here to listen to the discussions, ask the questions, and be involved in the presentation. So at this point, what we would like to do is get right into the resolution that we were dealing with yesterday. So I am going to ask Encore if we can get into draft resolution number 41, if we can have that put up on the screen, please. I know there's discussion in the back of the room. If I can have some kind of order, please. If we can have the discussion taken out in the hall, but we would like to continue with discussions. Again, we are in the middle of a resolution. We do require a quorum, so we will be checking because I did see sort of a large delegation leaving the room, and I'm going to have a quick look to make sure that we do have quorum. I know there was a question yesterday on yesterday's quorum numbers. So we did the quorum count this morning. For business for the rest of the day, the number of delegates in the room at the time was 165. That includes in the room and online. So the quorum to continue discussions for today is 84. So as long as we have 84 in the room, here in person and online, we will be good to proceed. So we are just setting up here, again, getting back to resolutions mode. And again, I do see a lot of discussion happening in the back of the room. If you can please take it outside so that we can get started on business. So again, we're on resolution number 41. I just want to confirm that we did start the process. And you are aware, I had already closed the speakers list yesterday with the delegations that were at the microphone. And in regards to the situation, we did suspend until today. I'll be totally honest, I don't have the speakers list, so we will end up starting again. So, if you wish to speak to Resolution 41, I will ask you to please approach the microphone because I will be closing the speakers list shortly. Again, Resolution 41, and I need to confirm that the mover and seconder are here. I've already read the resolution into the record. There were some minor amendments that was accepted by the mover and seconder. I just want to confirm that the mover and seconder are here. Mover Salem is here. Chief French, he's on his way. Any indication how long? Oh, he's in the building. Okay. So we have the mover in the room. The seconder is on his way. And he was here to start the discussion, so I will give him a few minutes. But we do see chiefs lining up at the microphone, so thank you very much. We'll also be monitoring online. So again, we're dealing with Resolution 41. If you wish to speak to the resolution, I will be closing the speakers list a little bit quicker. It was already closed yesterday, but I will allow some time to approach the microphone. While we are waiting for the seconder, I will start and go. So mover, the mover, Chair Kilsalem, microphone 1. Go ahead.
Thank you. We just texted with Chief John. He had to take a meeting at this time, so he won't make it back shortly. But we do have Chief Erica here who is willing to second.
Just give me 1 second. Thank you. So just this was a unique situation. We had the medical emergency in the middle of the resolution, and so you're offering to second the motion. Okay, for the record, microphone 1, please.
Chief Erica Bowden, Cowles First Nation.
Thank you. Miigwech. So we'll open up the floor. Again, delegates, chiefs, proxy representatives, if you wish to speak to draft resolution 41, if I can have you come up to the microphone now, and we can start to expedite the process and then get to a vote. So, microphone 1, did you wish to speak to the resolution? Go ahead. Up to 4 minutes. You don't have to take the full 4, but you have up to 4.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Creator for another day, all of the prayers and medicines that have been used. I'd like to acknowledge the courage and bravery of the people who spoke this morning, the youth, the mothers. This is what we live with every day. Many of us, this is the life that we have chosen to work in, so that we give comfort and assistance in either children and families not having to experience this, or they can move on and heal. My name is Erica Bowden. I am Chief of Cowles First Nation. I am the rep from Saskatchewan on the Children's Chief Committee. I was nominated by my peers to do this sacred work on not only behalf of our nation, but on behalf of our region. My responsibility is to our children, nations, and chiefs in Saskatchewan and on our lands in now what is Canada. We have been given the inherent right from Creator to raise our children and families in the way we were given. Canada has, also through their own legislation, has given us as elected chiefs and council responsibility for all of our members or citizens. We are the rights holders. We are the ones who at the end of the day hold the hands of our children, families, and staff who are passionate and do this hard work. As a Chiefs Children's Committee, we are accountable and will provide accountability to our regions and to all chiefs, and most importantly, to the wellness and well-being of our children who deserve the best. We will work and be guided by our technicians in doing this sacred work. They are the true heroes and sheroes who know what our kids need. We thank all of the work that has been completed to date. It has not been in vain. But now it is up to all of us to ensure fair representation of voice and action occurs. This includes Canada, who will only benefit from us doing this correctly. In fact, it is only in this elevated accountability and transparent way that we will all have a level of knowledge that we work. We cannot predict the future, but if we all work together, all of us, then we will never know how many lives, communities, nations, and even what is now Canada has been positively impacted. But we do know that we will see the outcomes by healthy and contributing families that benefit all of us. Mio Pamatsuin, we are responsible to do this work together under Creator's laws so that we live in that bounty and love that is meant for all of us. Hi, hi.
Thank you. Microphone 2, please. You have up to 4 minutes.
Judy Wilson. My traditional name is Red Hummingbird. I'm from the unceded territory, the Secwepemc Ulu. I'm a proxy holder for Chief Barb Code from the Shuswap Indian Band in Invermere, BC. I too would like to thank the youth and the mothers that came up to speak to the mic, that spoke their truths, and the reality that's happening to all of our people across our regions, and the murders by the RCMP and the genocide that's continuing. I also wanted to speak to what Mary TG spoke about with the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, the decision from Indigenous Service Canada, from the federal government barring the First Nations Leadership Council and not allowing us to intervene. It's really setting a precedent across Canada for any of the regions that want to be interveners at this Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. All voices should be heard and all the parties should be able to support that. So we do again request that Minister Patty Hajdu retract that decision from Indigenous Service Canada to bar the First Nations Leadership Council as interveners at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. Speaking to the motion, the resolution, I support it. I think it's been an inclusive process to the best it can from all the regions. 8 of the National Children's Chiefs Commissioners have been appointed, and we're looking forward to the other ones joining. I understand BC will be hosting the first meeting, and also this process that has opened it up to be inclusive of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, as it should have been in the beginning, and that all voices need to be heard in a more transparent, accountable process, so that when we have those issues, we can work on them together and support one another instead of being divided whether some of our nations work through their agencies, or whether some of the agencies are, working with the First Nations and determining what the First Nations right holders' jurisdiction is. And this process in 41 outlines clearly all the steps needed to take to implement Resolution 60 and 61, which I was a part of as well in Calgary. And we're looking forward to the chiefs being able to look at that process where they can ensure that, as you heard from Trudeau, he said the money is still there. I heard a lot of chiefs saying they thought the money wasn't there. CHRTC actually has the order for $45 billion, but the floor, as mentioned in the resolution, would be $47.8 billion as the floor. So we're working from that to achieve a better result. There's a $10 billion gap as identified by physical democracies studies. that we need to achieve to close that gap. I want to thank all of the regions for their amazing work and the long, hard, tired work that they've done over the last few days and since Calgary, and all of the chiefs and leaderships that are looking towards working together and collectively, as Kusela eloquently said, we're riding that canoe. So Cook's Jam, and thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to microphone number 1, just a reminder, everyone in the room, chiefs, proxy representatives, the circle of trade that's happening next door, it wraps up at 1 o'clock, so they're done at 1 o'clock if you want to make your way over before that happens. Microphone 1, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Chief Archie Wabas, Wannaman Lake First Nation. I would like, first off, I would like to present something to the chiefs for their thoughts and consideration. I'm not speaking on this resolution yet. You know, when we invite the Prime Minister or ministers on our table, they only come here for, you know, maybe 20 minutes or 50 minutes. And there's a lot of us that want to talk to him or the ministers. I don't know, I don't see it as a productive dialogue. I think we should look at having a table, a national table perhaps, with the Prime Minister and First Nations, the chiefs, and spend time, have a candid discussions on issues, priorities of our First Nations. I think we should look at that, look into that, you know. I think that would be more productive. And in these discussions, we would have some answers to our questions and also action plans that we agree upon with Canada. You know, that kind of a dialogue. I personally, as chief, I want to work with the government or any government, any Prime Minister, meaning a nation talk arrangements for my community, you know. So I need time to have a dialogue with the Prime Minister, the ministers, in a form of, you know, a table, perhaps. That's what I wanted to say, okay? On the resolution, I have a concern, and we have a concern. What's going to happen is, if we pass this resolution, if passed, this resolution would formalize the NCCC and enable child care, the Caring Society to displace Chiefs of Ontario, Sinabi Nation, and AFN in negotiations with Canada. Ontario has no terms of reference in advance of this assembly. We have seen no work plan. Ontario has seen no terms of reference in advance of this assembly. We didn't see that.
30 seconds.
And we have seen no work plan in advance of this assembly. Why would we approve materials we have not seen or allowed for our technical advisory committee to review and analyze? This centralization undermines our regional diversity and sovereignty, erasing unique needs and priorities of nations across Turtle Island. That is my concern, and my concern of fellow chiefs of Ontario. I'm not voting for this. I'm not supporting.
If you can wrap up, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Miigwech, Chief Wabas, for your understanding. Microphone number 2.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Callahan Head, Vice Chief from Red Cree Nation, Treaty 5 Territory in Saskatchewan. I want to first of all say it is unfair of what had just happened here a few moments ago. I was in line to speak, and there were a lot of people that were standing in line as well to speak. And I want to ask the leadership at the AFN, as part of true reconciliation, to set aside a day for the leadership to address the Prime Minister and the ministers if they cannot acknowledge and read the letters that they receive. I want to recommend that because I believe it's very important that we are heard. I was going to address to the Prime Minister that the letter that we wrote to him back in 2018, we didn't receive a response or even an acknowledgement. So I support the comments made by the other chief. In regards to the resolution at hand, I want to read the Red Cree Nation position. Bill C-92 and Bill C-15 or any other legislation cannot give us what we've always had. Red Cree Nation as Mixquakak Nehewak legislation, the Convention 1992 and Convention Act that sets out the foundation upon which our Red Cree Nation will exercise our lawmaking powers and authorities to legislate and regulate systems and structures, mechanisms and institutes of government and governments, including child and family services. The way forward for Red Cree Nation. Red Cree Nation opposed and rejected the final settlement agreement that was presented before us. An arrangement that seeks to dismiss us as mere recipients of the Indian Act-based systems and subject to federal and provincial regimes and regulated funding arrangements. We counter-propose that there be unconditional grant funding for the development and implementation of our own comprehensive social safety net regimes, including Indian Child and Family Services, for the Indian nations across this land as a gesture of true reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking online, nobody online, so I'll come back to microphone 1. Microphone 1, please.
Ani Tiktodem, Ajajaktodem, Megazekwedushnagas, Lori Noswin, Michisagi Anishinaabe Endau. Minokajeb, good morning, everyone. My name is Lori, and I'm Chief for Hiawatha First Nation in Southern Ontario. I come forward I don't have any amendments, but I do have comments and questions, and Hiawatha is not in support of this resolution. I would also like it noted, because there was no place on the online voting to note that Hiawatha was not in support of resolution number 38 either. So we have no one. I heard yesterday talk of transparency and commitment, but yet we have no one from Ontario on this committee right now. We have not seen this. I received this draft terms of reference at 4:36 last night. So how, and as the chief just previously spoke, how are we supposed to look at this and analyze this and then have, and then we call that transparency? We haven't seen this, we haven't been able to do this. Also, the fact that it could potentially, if we have caring society, and we have people who work in the child welfare, that to me is a conflict of interest on this committee. So if this passes, I'm not giving up my jurisdiction or my community's rights, my people's rights to organizations for the care of all my children, when not one, and especially in Ontario when we don't have anyone on this, is to think that they know what is best for my community. I hear that all the time in these meetings. You don't speak for me, you don't do these, and yet we're doing that through this resolution. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have to apologize in terms of the order of the speakers. There was, in fact, a hand raised on Zoom, so I'm going to go back to Zoom and then come back to the order. Again, apologies. Chief Lee Spehan on Zoom. If you can go ahead, please. Chief Spehan, are you there? We'll give it a few seconds. If we can have Chief Spehan unmuted. Unless that is a hand that was raised previously. I know your hand was raised while we had the Prime Minister and the ministers here. Chief Spehan, are you there? If
Good
not,
morning, Lee Spehan, Chief of the Coldwater Band, in the Cup Nation, Interior British Columbia. First of all, I'd like to agree with the two previous chief speakers on having more time with the PM and the ministers. I know for a fact that that will never ever happen. They will never give their time to sit down with the chiefs of Canada, but it's a question that can be asked. The first question I have in regards to draft 41, it talks about reporting back to the assemblies. And, you know, the next assembly isn't until July. So is the executive and the national chief going to hold a special chiefs assembly before the July assembly to have the chiefs committee report back to the chiefs in assembly across Canada? Just in regards to draft 41, beyond the 10 years to ensure that the equitable and ongoing funding for unique needs of each nation and province needs based not per capita funding formulas. Is that included in this draft resolution? And if not, why not? And will it be amended to state this statement that is being put forward? Guksham, thank you.
thank you. So those are some questions, but I think also as part of those questions are broad statements. But I'm going to look to the mover if there's any response or comments to those questions. Chair Kilsalem is approaching microphone number 1. If I can have the mover respond, please.
Just to be supportive of, I know there's a few other speakers, what I would suggest, if that's okay, is we could go to the rest of the speakers. I'm taking notes of all the questions, and then before we go to the vote, I could answer all the questions at that time, if that helps.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So we will come back to the order, and then we'll go microphone 2 back online, and then follow the same order. Microphone 2, go ahead.
Oh, good morning. Oh, first of all, I want to thank the spiritual people for lifting up the pipe in their prayers. I haven't done that in the last 2 days, so I'm sorry, but I always respect that and I welcome it. Thank you. Last night, yeah, we did get the terms of reference, which is reflected in Resolution 41. And it says in there, and I did talk to the gentleman, and he said he would change it, but I wanted to put it on record. On the terms of reference, it says, their work will not affect, cancel, or supersede any treaty between Canada and First Nations or any existing agreement between Canada and any other First Nations. I wanted to change that first part, any treaties between Canada and the Imperial Crown, because the pre-Confederation treaties and our treaties are with the Imperial Crown, not Canada. And then the rest, it says, and any existing agreements between Canada and any other First Nations, which could include the modern treaties or any other agreements that are in place. So I'd like to request a mover and a seconder if that can be changed. You know, we received this terms of reference. We took it upon ourselves last night to read it and to be able to understand what is in that terms of reference. And I think when we come to these assemblies, we have to access and get the required information in order for us to make an informed decision. That's our responsibility as candidates or as representatives of our First Nations. And I am sure, you know, that the new negotiating committee, well, they have to report to the chiefs in assembly, and that's something that has to be set up periodically so we can hear the reports of what they're accomplishing. And any First Nation, including the Ontario chiefs, will be able to participate. There's no one in particular that is identified that could participate in this. In the final settlement agreement, we weren't even involved. We weren't even invited to make our comments. So, but now the invitation is open to everyone. So you can do that. So I am in support of this resolution, and we just have to make it our point to be there and get the information and give our input. The other thing too is the one that was defeated, it said final settlement agreement. It missed people, it missed our children, and it did not take into consideration the future of our children who can be discriminated at. So I'm asking, please do not put final settlement agreement so it can continue that our children are not discriminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2 for those comments. I just want to clarify that there were edits made in the terms of reference. So those edits, those changes were read into the record by Proxy Crowchild. It was not an amendment to the actual resolution. So I just want to clarify that. Also noted, it is a reference to the terms of reference that was actually handed out yesterday afternoon. It was never, to begin with, read into the record, but it is the version that was handed out, and it now includes the changes that were just read into the record. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, just for the record, that it was BC AFN that handed out the terms of reference. It was not the AFN, just so that we're all clear in terms of which terms of, there's only one terms of reference that was handed out. Was there 2? Okay. FSIN as well, is that, okay. So is the FSIN terms of reference part of, so we need some clarification now. The reason I want to be clear is there is clear reference to a terms of reference in the resolution, but it was not actually handed out when the resolutions were handed out. So we need to be clear. Microphone 1.
Yeah, thank you. So there is 2 terms of reference that are referenced, so many word references, 2 terms of reference referenced in this resolution. One is for the negotiation team and one is for the Children's Chiefs Commission. In our resolution that we passed in Calgary a few weeks ago, it called for the terms of reference for the negotiation team to be brought to the next assembly, which is this one we're at now. And they are draft terms of reference that are open to further collaboration and amendment to be brought back for final approval at the next scheduled Chiefs Assembly. But just to speak to the challenge, there is a line in the meeting rules and procedures that state that you can't add attachments or other addendum documents to a resolution. So when we submitted the resolution to the Resolutions Committee, we worked with them on the resolution. We did submit the terms of reference, but they told us they couldn't distribute them because there's a line in the meeting rules and procedures that don't allow them. So their recommendation was to take the broad principles of the terms of reference and actually write it into the resolution, which is what we did with their support, and that's all included in the preamble of the resolution. So I just wanted to explain why some of those things happened the way they did. The terms of reference were intended to be distributed, but we had to do it ourselves, unfortunately, because of the rules.
Thank you for that clarification. So I've given advance notice. I'm now going to close the speakers list. So it's closed. We will include those that are at the microphones, but no more speakers after that. Microphone 1, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Still good morning. Former Chief of Rosa River and Anishinaabe First Nation, Terrence Nelson, now proxy for Rosa River. I was here yesterday going to comment, and then the lady fell down here and had a seizure, so I didn't get the chance to speak to that. I guess I was very clear with what I wanted to say, and that was exactly what some of the things he said. I wrote the book Genocide in Canada in 1997, so I was using the word genocide way back when. And the definition for genocide, according to the 1948 United Nations, is killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm to or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction or in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. And E is the one that I wanted to talk about, was that forcefully transferring children of the group to another group. That's what they've been doing. That's what Canada was involved in genocide. And my father was born in 1929, went to residential school in LeBret, and my mother went to residential school in Portage Prairie. It was talked about that 4,100 to 6,000 children died in the residential school. And Mary Sinclair just passed away, but the AGI was very clear that these deaths, they didn't when we started out, they weren't calling it genocide. Today it's normal for people to call it genocide, and it is. That's what it is. You know, when you're a child looking out the window and you've been taken from your home, from your parents and your grandparents, your community, and you're looking out the window and looking for mom. You know, people don't understand that today. But if there was 10 of us that went to a white home and pulled a white kid out of that home to go learn in a reservation or something, then they'd start to understand what they did to our people. They took them right out of our community. And so I'm very clear that it is genocide. That's what it's been. But I also want to talk to you about, I did get convicted of 5 common gaming houses back in 1997 at a 245-page decision on gaming. And basically, you know, I was doing that back in the day to set up our own jurisdictions, go forward. And the thing that I really understood is that we're not, we're always constantly coming over here looking for funding. Well, I don't want funding. I want payment from our treaty area.
20 seconds.
Yeah, so I'd like to, you know, let's get on to the issues of creating, you know, payment from the people, because they pay to the federal government, the provinces, the municipalities, the education system, but they don't pay us, and they have to pay us for our land. Thank you.
Thank you, Miigwech. Thank you for respecting the time guidelines. Microphone 2.
Chief Don Miracle, Mohawks the Bay Quinte. I am not in support of resolution number 41, as articulated by some of the other chiefs from Ontario that have already spoken for the same reasons. I didn't receive this terms of reference until late yesterday afternoon. We've not had a discussion about it at any length in our caucus or with our councils. I have no mandate from my community to delegate the responsibility for our children to someone else who may not know anything about the circumstances of our people. Canada does not, when they're dealing with provinces, they don't need a national agreement to make an agreement for the delivery of services with each of those provinces. So I don't know why we need to have this collective agreement across the country for us. There's a lot of diversity in the regions, and maybe the way that child welfare is provided in the different regions is different. Like we have the 1965 Canada-Ontario Welfare Agreement, which is unique specifically to our province. I don't know if any of that's impacted and will be in jeopardy. And so to me, I think each region has to represent their own way of doing business and their relationships with the Crown. And so to me, I think a regional agreement would be the better way to proceed, because I think these differences between the regions are insurmountable. We're going to delay the help that our children need, both on and off reserve. To incorporate now the on-off reserve portion, it may have the government may require the provinces to be involved in that discussion. So I think we're slowing this down by a decade or more. And children are suffering now. They can't wait a decade or more. All commitments of the government die on the order paper if there's election writ dropped. So then you're starting again from scratch. To broaden it to include off reserve, to include NWT, and I don't know what the government's response would be, particularly the Poilievre government. And I think if we lose $47 billion goes down the drain, the chiefs are going to have a lot of explaining to do to the children who are now suffering. And I think there's a real risk involved in the way that we're conducting business. And what is the plan if that happens? Who's going to answer to our people if that's the fallout of all this? Are the chiefs going to get up and say, I voted against it and I'm at fault for the help that could have been made available didn't come? Because that could very well be the position where that could be the dock that boat lands at. So I can't support this. I think the circumstances that we're in now, the unpredictability of what another government might think, and the Canada's already said the $47 billion is the ceiling. The negotiators did the best job they could to come back. I'm sure they recognized it wasn't sufficient. And I guess if Off Reserve were to be part of it, how come it's only coming up after we're at this stage? So to me, I can't support this.
Thank you. We now turn to microphone number 1. Go ahead.
Chief Shelley Moore-Frappier, Temagami First Nation, and I would echo what the past chiefs have said before me. I am in opposition to resolution number 41, and the First Nations Caring Society does not speak for Temagami First Nation. With that being said, I have some major issues with the draft terms of reference for the National Children's Chiefs Commission. There are several concerns, but one major concern is the composition of the Chiefs Commission. It is titled as a Chiefs Commission. However, the language in Section 7 does not guarantee that this will actually be a Chiefs Commission. It talks about composition being regional representatives, alternates and technicians, but there is no guarantee that these appointees will actually be chiefs. If this will actually be a Chiefs Commission, there should be an amendment to Section 7 that directs that the composition must be chiefs only, with the ability to appoint an alternate. If chiefs want advice from their technicians, they can always do so. And I want to echo what Chief Ardon was talking about now. We need this money now. I live in a remote First Nation community in Northern Ontario on an island, and the remoteness money is something that we can actually support our families in the community immediately. We can't wait for litigation. We can't wait for 10 years, 5 years, however, 3 months. We can't wait. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Miigwech.
Thank you. Chief Moore-Frappier, I just want to clarify, so is that a request for an amendment in the change? Because the resolutions team has a change, if that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, I'm asking if that can be an amendment.
Okay, thank you. So we will deal with that, and I'm just reminded we have the other amendments that I'd like to remind everyone of. So let's go to this amendment up on the screen. If we can go to... We can start with K. Whereas? Yeah, whereas. Is that the previous? Do you want to go through the previous ones first or this one? Just this one. Okay, we can. Okay. So we are going to the resolution, which is under the preamble, whereas K, number 4. I'm just looking at the screen. We do not have the amendment yet, but also the change would be in the terms of reference, which we don't have on the screen, Chief Moore-Frappier, but you did read what it is that you wanted. You'd like that change in the terms of reference. I just want some clarification. Yes, okay, and you did read that into the record. I just want to confirm that we have that. Did we get a note of that?
Yeah, we have a resolution, or we have a resolution amendments.
Okay. So we do have your resolution amendments as well. That is coming up. But I just want, for the record, the change in the terms of reference so that we I want to make sure we got it right. Can you approach the microphone? Also to advise, we had already closed the speakers list. So we have one more at microphone 1 and then one more at microphone 2. Go ahead. Microphone
correct.
1.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Can you just read what you wanted included in the terms of reference? Just for the record.
Okay. So the amendment to Section 7 that directs that the composition must be chiefs only, with the ability to appoint an alternate. If chiefs want advice from their technicians, they can also always do so.
Okay, thank you. So that's in the resolution, right? Thank you. So that would be added to the terms of reference. And again, because the terms of reference is not actually written up on the screen, process normally is ask the mover and seconder. Mover, are you okay with that? And then I'll be looking to the seconder.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments. So we're going to reject the amendments to the resolution, but the feedback on the terms of reference, they are, like I said, draft terms of reference. So there will be an opportunity to continue to provide feedback to the terms of reference for them to continue to be edited until they're brought back for final approval. So there is that opportunity. But the reason why I just wanted to say no to this amendment this time is part of the discussion that came up back before Calgary and then continued then is we want to respect the regions and their process for who they want to appoint and how they want to appoint them. We don't want to prescribe that. My understanding is that I think 7, if not 8 of the current commissioners are actually chiefs right now. So the majority are chiefs. But there's also the context where some regions have started to reclaim, different leadership titles. They've moved away from the chief title or they don't have a chief title. So we're just trying to find a balance to respect the authority of the regions to do how they want to do things and also the nations themselves. So it is open. So we kept it open for that reason to be flexible. But I would say at this point, the majority of the commission right now is chiefs. So I think that concern is addressed that way. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to be clear, the proposed amendment has been rejected. So we're taking that off the screen. Chiefs and proxy delegates, I had already closed the speakers list, so finally there's one more at microphone 1, one more at 2. I provided advance notice that I would be closing the speakers list, so thank you for your respect in that matter. Where did we end off? I think we were here, so microphone number 2.
Good morning. My name is Linda Hamline. I'm the proxy for Barren Lands First Nation in Manitoba. My issue that I'm coming to speak about is in relation to Jordan's principle. So first of all, I'd like to begin with acknowledging that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I'd like to thank the Elders Assembly and the regional chiefs and all chiefs present for having me here. As well, I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize Jordan River Anderson. It is because of Jordan and his tragic passing that First Nations children have access to specialized services across Canada and in their First Nation and urban areas. I come before you on behalf of my chief, Michael Seawap, our leadership, our First Nation, Barren Lands First Nation, our parents, and most importantly, our children. I would like to preface my comments at this time by saying that we are here to express our individual concerns from an individual First Nations perspective, which may or may not be that of other First Nations in Manitoba or political entities. I am the director for Barren Lands First Nation Jordan's Principle and have been working with Jordan's Principle for over 7 years now in the province of Manitoba. As you are all aware, the pilot for creating service program delivery for Jordan's Principle began in Manitoba at Pune-Moontang. Over the last 7 years, Jordan's Principle has grown exponentially both in program and service delivery. The implementation of the social component to Jordan's Principle back to basics has put individual First Nations Jordan's Principle service delivery programs in a position of enabler and assister at the same time. We were given no guidelines with the implementation of back to basics or direction as to how to determine the criteria of eligibility other than the initial eligibility to access Jordan's Principle as a whole. I am a member of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Technical Advisory Group and often chair the meetings. I was a member of the subcommittee under this umbrella to devise recommended guidelines for the fiscal distribution and implementation of Jordan's Principle across Manitoba First Nations. The premise behind the establishment of these guidelines was to allow the First Nations of Manitoba to have similar structure and service delivery from all three pillars of Jordan's Principle, that being health, education, and social. Although the guidelines were not a mandatory obligation to implement, it allowed us to deliver Jordan's Principle more consistently, which allowed for a better understanding and expectations from our recipients of our individual First Nations. That being said, as a result of the delivery of Jordan's Principle service, there has been certain expectations created at a community level from our recipients. This can range from the right to services and the sense of entitlement of some services. We are in a position to explain the terms of what wants versus needs, with the latter predominating. Regionally, we have been directed to spend, dream big, provide services without guideline and policy. Suddenly, on October 22nd, 2024, we are getting direction from the tribal councils that NIHB is no longer accepting individuals' First Nation recommendation letters to send our children out with parents who have appointments or extra siblings for parents who have appointments. We are, I guess I have to go away from this now. We are suddenly experiencing a lot of cuts financially from the national level, and our children are now going in without services. We have cuts to specialized services. We have...
Thank you. If you can start to wrap up, please.
On
the vote? Sorry, call question on the vote? Yeah, we haven't closed the speakers list yet. Thank you. I'll go with those that are recognized.
The bottom line is that we're asking to have, if on this, on the Children's Chief Commission, our Chiefs Commission or negotiation team, a representative from the grassroots level in Manitoba, as we've been implementing Jordan's Principle directly from our First Nations for the last 7 years.
Thank you. I had closed the speakers list with one more at microphone number 1, but I see 2 more behind you. They came up after, but I had given advance notice that the speakers list is closed, unless Chief King, you want to give them some time. But microphone 1.
Chief Wilfred King, Kiasagi, Nishnabek, Gulby First Nation. I don't know if I'll have enough time to yield, Mr. Chair, so I cannot guarantee that. So you could start my time back up to 4. Chief Wilfred King, Kiasagi, Nishnabek, Gulby First Nation. I'll be voting against this resolution, and I'd like to state my reasons why. We understand that the agreement, the draft agreement, was voted down, and we're looking at a new process. We have to keep in mind that this agreement reflects around a program. Didn't talk about any kind of treaty rights or Aboriginal rights or inherent right. And it has nothing to do with treaty. It has everything to do with a government program. And my concern is that, you know, we've heard a lot of discussion about, you know, treaty rights being impacted in this assembly. And we've talked about how the AFN doesn't speak for my community or whatever. We're part of the Assembly of First Nations, Gulby First Nations, and a proud member of the Assembly of First Nations. We're a signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. So we partake in these discussions. And there are times when I have had my disagreements with the AFN, but we elected a national chief, we elect a regional chief that sits on the executive. And so we support those positions, even though sometimes we did not vote in favor of that national chief or that regional chief. But for the most part, Gull Bay First Nation recognizes those vehicles as a way that we could articulate our voice at a at the higher level where national concerns are being raised. What I see happening here is it's a direct impact and an affront to First Nations that have the inherent right to govern what happens in their community. To me, when we allow agencies that are corporate entities, you know, to usurp the function of chief and councils, to me, it's a step backwards in time. Because we're talking about sovereignty, we're talking about the inherent right of the First Nations, and yet we're allowing provincial corporate entities to take the lead. I don't agree with that. You know, it's the chief and council or elected leaders in the community that speaks for the people and the children. Today, we heard some discussions. This case only represented the on-reserve population. Then we heard talk, well, there's not enough money to look after all our kids. Well, because this case only talked about on-reserve, and it was only about on-reserve. Well, Gull Bay is very proud of the fact that we only have one child that's in care on reserve. We're very proud of that. So this money would have helped that child, perhaps, but all our other children on reserve that would not go into the system. And it's a $40 billion bundle that we're looking at here, over $40 billion. And today when we talked about the minister, the minister was asked that question, she said, I'll have discussions. She didn't say I was going to renegotiate, she said, we'll have that discussion. Then there was a question asked, are you going to, if there was going to be a judicial review on the letter? And to me, we have no answers here from that government that was sitting there. I didn't bother asking a question because I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. But I think the other thing that we forgot to mention today, again, Mr. Chair, was the issue of conflicts of interest.
Thank you. If you can please wrap up now, please.
That is the wrap up. Where was the conflicts of interest that should have been raised?
Thank you. So we had already closed the speakers list, and there was a question to the mover and seconder. Okay, we had closed the speakers list. Others have turned back, but I'm asking please respect the protocols. I did give advance notice. I'd be closing it, but if I can have Chair Salem come up. So very quick at microphone 1. Very quick, please.
Thank you. And I did tell the chair that I'd be requesting this. Just very quickly, under composition, it states that a chief can have one alternate, and in Manitoba region, we're asking it to say an alternate. Chief Heidi Cook and myself, Chief Angela Levasseur, are the alternates for Chief David Monias. We have children. We have small children. I have 5, she has 2. We can't always travel. So please consider changing that to an alternate. Mikosani.
Thank you, Migach. Microphone 1, remover, sorry, the mover. I don't know if he's going to remove that section, but the mover.
Yeah, we're supportive of that. If it could change in the resolution where it says one alternate just to an alternate.
Okay.
And then I support that change just to be respectful of the regions and their
Thank
process.
you. Seconder, are you okay with that? Yes. Okay, so we'll make that change. I didn't mean to call you the remover, but you did remove it, so thank you.
Thank you.
The mover.
There we go. So I do want to thank all of the comments and the dialogue that we've had on this resolution. I know it's been a very challenging few days for many of us on different issues. So I did take notes. I'm just referring to my notes here so I can respond to the questions and comments. And I'll try to go through this in the order that I wrote it. So there was a question around the per capita funding topic from Chief Elise Behan from BC. I think it was an excellent comment. And I think that is one of the topics that we've written into Resolution 60 and 61 as a point to have that be further discussed as a part of the negotiation. So it's not a done deal on that per capita issue. Do want to address the Ontario participation. So there is the space. Ontario hasn't appointed a rep to the Children's Chiefs Commission yet, but that space remains available. That being said, there were chiefs from Ontario that were a part of the working group that helped draft both Resolution 60, 61, this resolution, as well as the draft terms of reference. So there has been some engagement from Ontario. But I think part of the challenge, I totally understand and hear the sort of concerns. I mean, I know many Ontario chiefs spoke this morning in opposition, but I think the challenge is, and what we've heard from all the regions, is that Coup and Nan were at the table from the beginning with the AFN. But all the other regions weren't at the table in the same way. And so part of the challenge is that the concerns with the FSA from the other regions, we didn't have the same level of influence over the FSA. And so we weren't able to participate in giving that feedback to improve it relative to the concerns or ideas that were coming from the regions. So the intention is to be inclusive of all the regions so that everybody can contribute to the outcome that we're all striving for. So there's continued invitation, and its part is written into Resolution 60 and 61 to include Ontario in any way that they would like to participate. And there was a question around what happens if government changes. I think it's an important question that did come up in Calgary. It came up today. I think it's a very valid question. Part of my understanding is that there is the CHRT orders. They still stand. There's still the obligation and orders from the CHRT that have been upheld. When Canada has tried to appeal those orders to the federal court, they've been quashed at that level as well. So those continue to stand, and we'll continue to have those orders to uphold the declarations that have come from the CHRT. Just checking my time. The on-reserve, off-reserve. So if you look at Resolution 60, this is a question that came up because I think that there was concerns around the sort of, are we trying to expand to off-reserve, and does that create a risk for us? So if you go back to Resolution 60, what it actually states, it doesn't state off-reserve, on-reserve. It states that Canada needs to uphold.
Reminder, we'll still follow the time.
Okay.
If we can wrap up.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Give me 5 more seconds. No. So the CHRT had an order around what the definition of First Nation needs to be. And Resolution 60, all it says is that Canada needs to uphold what the CHRT granted as a definition of First Nation, which is to uphold the inherent rights of First Nations to define who we say as a First Nations member. So that's all it says in the resolution around that off-reserve, on-reserve piece. And the last thing is that Canada has ordered, CHRT has ordered Canada to end the discrimination against First Nations children. That's what the focus of this is all about. It's not just a program, it's about ending the discrimination against our children.
Thank you. So we've had discussion, deliberation on the resolution before you, so I'm going to call for question, and we will now vote. If we can have Encore, please open the electronic voting. A reminder, this is the first resolution we're dealing with, so we'll have a brand new email, and you will have the 6-digit code. It's the same process Make sure you have your 6-digit code, enter that. You can cut and paste. Click on the link, it takes you to your own private site. All information is encrypted, and you can vote. The voting is open. It's listed as draft resolution number 41. It has the title, and I see that people have started voting. If you have any questions or issues in the room here, just raise your hand. I see we're getting some help over here. Reminder, the staff with the blue lanyards are here to help with any technical issues you have on voting. Also, so we have 2 hands raised over here. Also, if you are online, if you have any issues, you can put it in the chat box. It's not on the record, of course, but there are staff available to assist. So the voting is taking place. We see numbers coming in. Thank you. So we will give it a minute. Just because this is the first one for today, I might allow an extra minute or so just to get back into the routine. While we are doing that, we will take a short break. I was reminded we need nourishment for our bodies. A lot of, especially what happened after yesterday, it's important that we have diabetics and people that we need to have some food, some sustenance. So we will be taking a break, but we do have some housekeeping announcements before people go. It will be a short break. We'll get started again at 1 p.m. with further resolutions. I'm hoping I see people getting up. I hope you have cast your vote. I see numbers coming in. I will give it another. Well, they're coming in, so I'll keep going. If there are issues in the room, I saw hands go up. Are we okay here now? Okay, there is one hand up in the middle. Just raise up. Yeah, there we go. Any issues over here to my left? Gowan. Over here. Okay, one more over here. 2 to my right. And I'll make sure those are dealt with first. And we'll be closing the voting very shortly. We're okay here? We're good? No, we're not good? You're working on it? Okay. Oh, it's the, okay. So numbers were still coming in. You're off. Good to see you, my friend. See you next time. Yeah, and we've got an issue. While we are waiting, microphone 2.
I don't know what's happened to my brother's phone, but you know, it's just still trying to get whatever. So I don't know, it's waiting, but that's just the frustration, you know, when the network's overrun. I believe it was commented yesterday, so hopefully he's able to vote, you know. It might come down to 1 vote, so hopefully that's not the case.
Okay, is he here?
He's right here.
Okay.
We've been having our hands up and everything.
Yep.
Maybe I'll help him and try to get signal or something, yeah?
So we have staff there with him assisting. The other option, of course, reminder that there are devices available. We have a number of tablets that are available for voting if anything happens to your device or you do not have access to a device. Are we good? Okay, right on. How about to my right? Did we resolve it? Okay. So it's just one more at the microphone. And if I can get an indication, a thumbs up, once we've been able to have your vote. I did see we're good? Okay, thank you. We'll now close the electronic voting. Please close the polls. Okay, we do have the closed polls. So the results, draft resolution number 41, 10 abstentions, 74 opposed, 146 in favor. So met the threshold? So the resolution carries. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Cedric just for a few announcements.
So real quick, I do know it's 12:30, so just to inform you about the process for the rest of the day, we will come back with emergency resolution number 2, which was distributed and is available at the distribution table. We'll try to get into a few of the baskets on children and families, environment and conservation, and then the support resolutions. If we do have time, there are also late resolutions that we could address.